All right, depending on which clock you look at, it is time to start our meeting. Welcome, everybody. I see lots of faces out there. Welcome to the January 8th, 2026 school board meeting, regular session. Let the record show that all 5 board directors are present, as well as our 2 student representatives. And I will now have somebody give the land acknowledgement. One of you like to do that? Thank you, Milo.
We acknowledge that the sacred land that we live and learn on today belongs to the Takelma, Shasta, Modoc, Klamath, and Umpqua peoples. We honor and acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we now call the United States. We recognize the Native American people's continuing connection to land, place, waters, and community. We pay our respect to their cultures, country, and elders, past, present, and emerging.
Thank you, Milo. Okay, next I will move on to the adoption of the agenda, and I will take a motion at this time to adopt the agenda as presented.
I move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second. All in favor? Thank you. Okay, next up we have the consent agenda, and it's quite lengthy this evening. We have the approval of minutes, the personnel report for January, enrollment report for January, an MOA for the boys head volleyball coach, so that's good news. We have a new team at AHS, and a very long list of policy updates, which includes our immunization, school sports participation, concussions, which we discussed previously, and the artificial intelligence policy, and a host of others that we have all reviewed. And that is it. So I will take a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented, unless anybody would like to pull one of the items.
I would like to pull 2 items. One, KBA from first read, because I have a clarifying question. And
KBA?
Then KBA.
Okay.
And then I'd like to pull GCAB from the second read, because I've got another clarifying question on that.
Point of order. The KBA is in second read tonight.
Sorry about that, second read.
Yeah, the only first read is the immunization and school sports. Okay. Okay, so we can go ahead and discuss those before we go ahead and approve the rest of the agenda. Sorry, you had something as well?
No, I was ready to move to approve, so I will.
Okay. All right, so you have the floor.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So for the KBA, do we have an associate AR with that, Dr. Hattrick?
Let me check.
And my question is just, do we have an AR with a associated fee schedule, or at least detail on fees?
There's one that's proposed that's in the works, correct? And have we finished the draft on it? Yeah. We have finished the draft on it.
Thank you. I'm good with that. And then for GCAB, I have a question for you on where the language came from on the definition of disruption, which we can pull up, but talks about a disruption for the purposes of this policy is not limited to, but includes one or more parent threatens to remove their child from a class or classroom. I just want to know if that came from, if that was homegrown or if that came from OSBA. Okay,
OSBA recommendation.
That's it.
Okay, so with those clarifications, I think we can then move on to approve as presented. Okay, so I will take a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I second.
All in favor? Okay, thank you. Okay, so too many pages here. So next we have our school presentation, and we have Bellview this evening with Christine McCollum. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Christine. I'm principal at Bellevue. I brought our baseline data and our growth data to talk to you about and our school goals, and I'm happy to take any questions. Just chime in if you have any as I'm speaking. Our mission statement at Bellevue that we developed a number of years ago together as a staff is inspiring future leaders to imagine and build a better world through thoughtful action and kindness. And we've reviewed that several times, and it always seems to be pretty important and timely, and it still seems to be that today. So all of the things you're about to see is our efforts to make that mission come true for our students. Right now, we've got 245 students, kindergarten through 5th grade, and we host the district's K-5 MAPS program, and MAPS stands for Multi-Age Positive Support. It's a higher level support classroom for students with special needs. We're also on a new adventure this year, as you probably are aware, with all of our blended classrooms in grades 2 through 5. So we've got 3 2-3 blends and 3 4-5 blends, and our approach to that this year has been to team teach. So in each of those grade bands, we've got one teacher specializing in language arts, one specializing in math, and one specializing in unit studies, which is science and social studies. And our math and reading specialists are helping reduce class size in the core a little bit so that all of those classes have a reasonable number of students in them and everybody's needs get met. My baseline data includes several different pieces because, as I'm sure you're aware, we switched assessment systems this year. So our baseline data is not, we don't know what that means yet. So try to provide some data that goes along with that to make it make sense. So in 24-25, our language arts state testing results, grades 3rd through 5th, we came in with 77% of our students proficient in language arts, which was a 13% increase over the previous year. And the thing that struck me the most in both language arts and math is the number of students that exceeded. Out of those 77% of students that were proficient, 56% of them exceeded the assessment. So I was excited about that. I also provided our spring scores from last year to give a basis of comparison compared to IXL. So with iReady last spring, we ended the year with 78% of our students proficient in language arts. And in the fall, we started with 42%. So it's a moving target, and it looks like a really dramatic growth over the course of the year. And it looks a little alarming in the fall. So I'm taking that as a piece of data, looking at the fall data for this year, and wanted you to do so also. Yes.
Quick question on the language arts state testing. It has not changed though.
It has not changed.
So that's awesome.
Yeah, 13% growth in 1 year is pretty darn great. I was happy. So if you look at students needing strategic intervention, last year, the students in that category, we started with 45% of our students in that category at the beginning of the school year, ended the school year with 17%, and students that were far below grade level at the beginning of the year last year, 13%, at the end of the year, 5%. So kind of with that as a backdrop for what data can look like in a year, we came in with our new assessment system, 63% of our students at or above grade level, 25% a little below grade level, and 11% far below. So I'm not sure yet how IXL scores compare to iReady, how they translate, but if they translate similarly, I feel pretty good about that.
Christine, we're implementing the new ELA curriculum this year.
Yes, yeah.
Thanks.
This is our first year with the new curriculum and a new assessment. So, similar setup for math. Our 2024-25 math proficiency was 68%. The prior year was 59%, so another pretty decent jump from year to year. And again, 43% of those 68% exceeded the state assessment in math. And I don't think I've ever seen that many kids exceed in math. So I'm super impressed with the way that our new math curriculum is working out for our kids. I think that the level of justification and defense that they have to provide with their answers and their thinking around math has really made a big difference in their ability to think through some of those complex math problems, particularly in the performance task. So I thought that was encouraging. And if you look at last year's iReady scores, it's a similar trend. So we ended the year 78% of our students at grade level started at 24% in the fall, so that was even a more dramatic piece of growth in math. In the needing some intervention, started off with 61% in the fall, ended the year with 17%, and far below grade level started with 15 and ended with 5%. So coming in this fall with IXL, 60% of our students are about where we'd like to see them. 28% need a little bit of support, and 11% of them need quite a bit of support in math.
I've got a question about this too, as a principal. So we know that the curriculum itself is like not the thing that matters most. It's the
Right.
teachers. Mm-hmm. Is this, in your opinion, the curriculum being like teachers liking it or being able to be more effective with it?
I think it's a couple of things. So the year before we adopted the math curriculum, we engaged in a professional development process called Math Studio, and really focused on math practices and math habits of mind with teachers and what kinds of questions to ask students and what kind of prompts you can provide to get them bumped up into some higher order thinking as they're moving through their math. And I think having that as a baseline before we went into the adoption was intentional. And we wanted to select a curriculum that supported that kind of thinking. And the curriculum that we selected matches really well with that approach. And I think both of those things together, we're seeing the results of that. We also do some assessment in social skills. And so this was an interesting piece of data to look at for me. We use a survey that's called the Strengths and Difficulties Survey, and it kind of tells us what kind of social skills are present or not present for our students, what kind of social difficulties they have, and the way that that's scored. Even if you've got some behavioral difficulties, if you've also got strong social skills, it kind of cancels each other out a little bit. So what we know is that the protective factor for students that struggle with behavior is having pro-social skills. And that's why we spend a lot of time on social emotional learning, it helps with academics, it helps with interpersonal relationships, it helps with all kinds of things. So an area of focus for us is continuing to work on those pro-social skills. It was really interesting to look back at the data. This fall, 89% of our kids came in where we'd like them to be with their pro-social skills, 3% needing a little bit of intervention, and 8% needing quite a bit of intervention. And if you look back at the previous fall, I had to check this several times to make sure it was right. It was exactly the same. And last year, we lost a little ground in the pro-social skills over the course of the year, and I think there's a couple of factors that were at play in that. First, I think when we do our initial scoring, it's a little bit during the honeymoon period of a school career, and you have a new teacher, and everybody's really doing a great job. And by the end of the year, sometimes you get to know each other a little better. But also, I think that it was a rough year for us, kind of globally. We adopted a new social emotional curriculum that was unfamiliar to us. And it has some strengths, but it also had some weaknesses that we weren't satisfied with at the end of the year. We felt pretty strongly that it didn't provide enough explicit instruction in skills, in pro-social skills, school skills. And so you'll see later on what we've done to try to plan for that moving forward this year. So based on all of that data, our language arts goal is by the end of this year to have 80% of our students at or above grade level as measured by IXL, with less than 10% needing intensive intervention. And our math goal is just a little bit below that because our baseline is a little bit below that too. And then our social emotional skills goal, we want to get that bumped up from 89 to 92. Last year we went down, so we'd like to go up this year. The higher you go, the harder it is to move. So we kind of tried to set a realistic goal there. Our literacy learning strategies to reach our goal is to implement our new curriculum. It's a lot. We've got 2 entire curriculums that's all new to everybody, and so it's a heavy lift, and I have confidence that our kids are going to do well, but it's a lot to take on for our teachers. And then using IXL as a regular tool for practice for kids throughout the week. We have teachers engaging in monthly PLC work on the topic of literacy. And kids have daily workshop time to practice their skills at an individual needs level. For math, we want to continue using those Math Studio strategies, focusing on mathematical practices and habits of mind. We want to refine our implementation of the illustrative curriculum, use IXL for practice as well. When we had our district-wide in-service day in October, the illustrative folks offered a few professional development sessions under kind of the banner of equity and inclusion. And one of the sessions that I went to, the woman presented where in the curriculum you can find these supplemental packs for students that come to us who have large educational gaps. We are still, after COVID, getting kids who haven't been to school for a number of years, which is really hard to close that gap in a timely fashion when they're in a class that's literally 2 to 4 years ahead of them instructionally. So it's not a Ashland alone, it's a nationwide issue. And so they have pulled together some of these packs because clearly you don't have 3 years to make up that gap. So they've pulled out the most essential skills to try to focus on to help kids get the skills they need as quickly as possible so that they can operate at grade level with everybody else. So we haven't had a whole lot of time to look at that, but I thought it was really cool that they had thought of that because it is a real issue that we face every year. So we want to take a look at those, and students also have daily workshop time to focus on their individual needs for math.
Can I ask one question about the Math Studio? So that's a professional development program, and that's completely independent of the illustrative math curriculum. Are we using that district-wide, or is that just Bellevue?
District-wide, we all engaged in that training. I would say that it actually started at the high school long ago, but I'm not sure that anybody's left at secondary that had that training. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We got 4. So yes, it has happened over the last 7 years, I would say, district-wide.
Thank you.
For social skills, our strategies for improvement, we've created a common scope and sequence for our SEL curriculum. Using the Wayfinder lessons that were adopted last year, the good ones, and then pulling from some of our previous resources to really shore up those more specific skills that students need to be successful in the classroom. And this year has already been leagues ahead behaviorally of compared to last year. It makes a huge difference. We wanted to kind of give the curriculum a go in its entirety and see how it went. We did. So now we added back a few more things. And we wanted to make sure that we were all the students were all getting the same kind of instruction and that it was consistent across classrooms. So we have a new CDS this year, and she's been really helpful in making sure that new teachers are supported and that teachers new to grade levels are supported, and making sure that happens in a timely fashion and that it's on pace to finish the year. We've also really increased our support for Tier 2 with social skills, and our new CDS is pretty instrumental in that, running all manner of small groups, and kids are having a really great time learning all the things with her. So that's been really fun to see. And our student study team works with families of students who are struggling to make sure that we're helping to make sure that they get what they need, whether that's at school or if we need to help connect to outside resources and community interventions. We have those meetings and make those plans.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yep.
It's a new person question. What's a CDS?
Child Development Specialist,
Thank you.
also known as a school counselor in other circles. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for asking. So this is our baseline Youth Truth data. I'm sure you guys have all spent some time looking at Youth Truth, and it's like a fire hose of information. So it's a little bit challenging to pick out the relevant bits. It's all good information to have, but knowing where to focus sometimes is hard. So what I chose to share with you out of the reams and reams of things are just the core themes from the Youth Truth data with students, families, and staff. And it was interesting to look at in that way. So with our students, and this is just students in 3rd through 5th grade, that's the lowest that survey goes is 3rd grade. The students' highest rated core themes were engagement and culture. The lowest rated core themes from students were relationships and academic challenge. For families, the highest rated themes were school safety and engagement. And the lowest rated themes were resources and communication and feedback. And for our staff, the highest core themes were school safety and relationships, and the lowest core themes were professional development and culture. So you could see there were some common agreements and some conflicts in what different groups thought were our strengths and our weaker points. So that's always interesting to see. So related to that, our welcoming and inclusive schools goal for students is that they will report a sense of belonging above the 85th percentile as measured by the Youth Truth Survey, and that is a data point that is provided every year through that survey. Our staff goal, we want to have a percent positive rate of 80% or more in the culture section on the Youth Truth Survey. I'm sure you all remember what was happening last March in our school district, and that's when we took that survey, and the culture was a little hard because half of our classified staff were not sure if they were going to have a job, and that was a big hit. So I'm imagining that we will have a lot of growth in that area because we're not going to be in that boat this year, which is lovely. Our family goal, participation has been a little bit of an uphill battle for us with the Youth Truth. Last year we had 53% participation, which was leagues ahead of the year prior, which was like 17% or something like that. So if we want to use this data in a meaningful way, we need to hear from more people. So our goal there is at least 65% with our families. So our strategies for our welcoming and inclusive goal is to make sure that we're implementing the family survey, get that feedback and measure our growth, make improvements based on our survey data. We also do a family survey at our back to school event in the fall, and we do that one on paper and pencil. I tend to get a really high rate of return on that one because they are there and they just fill it out before they leave. And we get a lot of good feedback in that survey as well, so we can kind of put those two pieces of information together. We look at that at site council when we are setting our school improvement goals, which all of these are lifted from our site council school improvement document. So that's just another data point for us to look at. At Bellview, we have a number of different programs that are open to our older students that encourage leadership and those kinds of opportunities. So our fifth graders have the opportunity to participate in Kindness Club. And that started, I think, 3 years ago out of a real need because there was some real unkind behavior happening. So we were like, I don't think they know how to do this. Let's get them together and figure it out. And then it became kind of a rite of passage that kids were excited about doing. So after the second year, we were like, do we really need to do this? Because I think they got it. And they were like, hey, it's our turn. We want to do the things. And we're like, okay, let's do the things. And so they get to decide what they want to do to promote kindness around the school. Our group this year has made posters. They've made cards to put on kids' desks when they're absent to welcome them back to school. They've put little quotes on bookmarks and hid them around the library. Usually we do some sort of service project at some point during the school year. So that's Kindness Club. Their fifth grade also has an opportunity to be on student council. So that is a group that talks to other students, and we meet once a month, and they bring any issues that they feel like could be improved or that they're really excited about to the table. And every month I'm blown away with what they do, and I can just sit there and listen, and they tell me all the things, and then they make all the plans, and I'm like, what do you need? Okay, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. Okay, go. And so they're a very responsible group, and they've done things like created hall monitors for themselves because they felt like they weren't doing a good enough job transitioning from one place to another. So they put up a little tally, and they keep track of which class is doing the best job, and then they get an extra recess or a dance party or whatever it is they want, and things like that. It's a pretty great group of kids. We also have a junior coach program that's open to 4th and 5th grade students, and they help with recess. They are problem solvers out on the playground. They have the problem solving wheel. They have a little vest. They can give out Bobcat tickets to kids that are doing the right thing. And probably most importantly, they help lead group games that engage a large number of students. So some kids aren't sure what to do with themselves at recess, and knowing that there's always going to be something going on that everybody can join is a good thing. So that's our junior coach program. And then out of student council, the kindergarten volunteering program that came up, the 5th graders, a chunk of them decided they really wanted to volunteer in the kindergarten classroom. And I was like, well, that's awesome, but I'm not sure what part of class you're going to miss to make that happen, you know? And they were like, well, we'll do it during our recess. And I was like, well okay. So they have a sign up if they are interested in doing that, and have been helping out our kindergartners for the last month or so. So that's all been really fun to see and be a part of. At our school, we have a combined positive behavior support and equity, diversity, inclusion team. So we used to be 2 different groups. We squished them together because if you're doing it right, it should be all part of the same thing. So we plan for system improvement in the school based on data with a teaching and positive lens. And we try to make sure that our systems are working and that we're not accidentally tripping kids up with grown-up issues or systems that aren't working very well. And we also take a look at what we're doing with equity and inclusion to see if there are places where we can improve our practices there and plan for our school-wide themes of belonging. This is our second year with student unions at our school, and right now we have two. We have our Native American Student Union and our Black Student Union. Love to get a Latino student union going again. We had one before, but we've lost our leader. And Asian student union too. I have a leader, but she's not available till after soccer is done. So it's been fun to get that started, and we'd love to expand those programs. So we're committed to making sure that every single kid grows academically and socially to try to fulfill our mission, our vision, and that's our school in a nutshell. Do you have any questions?
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Questions?
I just want to say, what a fabulous presentation. I love what's happening at Bellevue, and I'm curious when I look at enrollment numbers. Your kids are staying at school. You're not dropping students, and I don't know if it's all just a great combination of these different initiatives that you're doing, or that you've got expert teachers. I'm curious. I think your people are very, very committed to your school. So tell me, what do you think is going on there?
I think all of that's true. We've been pretty stable after a pretty dramatic drop. So this is my 20th year at Bellevue, minus the 3 that I was gone, 1 in Coos Bay and 2 at the district office, but I'm pretty familiar with our data for a long time. So historically, we've had before COVID, between 300 and 320 students was our pretty normal place to land as far as enrollment went. And after COVID, we've been basically at hovering right around 250 within a couple of students that whole time. So it's been stable, but we've not recouped after COVID the chunk that we lost.
Stability is not. So,
Yeah. Thank you. All right.
All right, thank you, Christine. So next up, we have bond report with Steve Mitzel, and this is a bond wrap-up session. So we also have Chris McKay, Dave McKay, and Josh Whitaker with us this evening. Welcome. Thank you for making the trek down to see us.
So thank you, as always, for having us here tonight. Has to be red, right? Yeah, there we go. Thank you for having us here tonight, as always. This is, as you mentioned, the wrap-up. I've been doing this since 2019 when I was first brought in as a director of operations and subsequently an executive director of operations. Throughout that project, I've been with HMK right from the beginning. They're going to go through a presentation and try to wrap up everything that we promised the community that we would do. But before I do that, I do have a few people that I have to recognize because there's been a lot of people that have been a part of this process, not just me. I mean, obviously, I played a key role, but I couldn't do what I do without the people that are around me. So first and foremost, I want to thank Robbie Moles. He's not here tonight, and I don't know that we'll ever get him into these chambers, but he might be watching at home. He's our facilities director, and he's been by my side since day one. Probably put more blood, sweat, and tears into these projects than I ever have, and will continue to manage these projects moving forward. So I thank Robbie. Rebecca Bjornson, who stepped in mid-bond as an administrative support. and was instrumental in acting as a liaison with our site administrators and with our staff as we moved through. Obviously, all of our departments that were inconvenienced throughout the process. Construction is messy, and whether they were being displaced or distracted or asked to deploy hundreds and hundreds of pieces of technology, they did it without complaint. Site principals and staff. Our administrators, our principals were instrumental in every step of the way. Every site that we had, they were actively involved throughout the process, both design and construction. They're right there in the job trailers with us in some of those messy conversations and the decisions that we had to make, and represented their sites well. And obviously the staff at every site that's inconvenienced. We have students that have literally spent their entire academic career under construction. A couple of them are sitting right here. So we thank them and their patience and resilience as we work through all these projects. Our past board members, there's a few of them here tonight. We have Eric, Sabrina, Denise, Jim, Victor, Tomas, Eva, Jill, and obviously the board members sitting in front of us here today. Over the past almost 7 years now, we've spent almost $140 million improving our facilities, and every penny of that was agreed upon by these board members. And you placed trust in us as we made those recommendations time and time again. Something that we're proud of is that we're still batting 1,000. We have not had a single board member not approve a recommendation that we put before you, and I've been before you at least 168 to 170 times, so thank you for that trust. A neat story about our business managers. Jordan Ely was the one that put us into a great fiscal position to actually get this bond passed with our community before he headed up north with his family. And it's Sherry Ely that's going to bring it across the finish line. So that's kind of a neat story. And then Alana and Scott were business managers along the way there. Superintendent Raymond, who was gracious enough to put me in this position, or to ask me to be in this position. That was a surprise. I wasn't ready for that, but I took it and ran with it, and I think I did okay. Superintendent Bogdanov, who placed his trust in me as we walked through, and then ultimately Dr. Hattrick, as he's continued to place that trust in us as we move forward. There's a lot of other people. I'm probably missing some folks. Our contractors, Adjournment, Outlier, our architect, BBT, Soderstrom. I mean, everybody we've worked with has been just top notch as we worked through some of the most difficult times we've ever had in construction. And we just kept the ball rolling, kept things moving forward, and we're pretty proud of what we've done at the end of the day. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to HMK. I'm going to let Chris introduce his team here. We've worked with a lot of folks from HMK through the years as they've gone through some changes as well, but this is pretty much the core. We're missing Mike Freeman. He wasn't able to get here tonight, but what you see before us has really been the heart of our project management team. So I'll turn it over to Chris McKay. He spent a lot of time before the board before he moved out of the area. He's back in the area now, and it's appropriate that he's going to help me bring this across the finish line. So there you go.
Well, thank you, Steve. Before I introduce myself and team, I can't let him go unacknowledged. I know he said all of his thank yous, but really, Steve has been the consistent voice throughout this bond. He has held things together in just an incredible way. I don't think that we could call this a success without his involvement, really. I mean, it's been an honor to work with him, and it's bittersweet. So I started this bond back in 2019. I had a brief period where I left the state, and it's been an honor to come back and be able to see old friends. Both Eva and Jim in the back, thank you so much, by the way. It's great to see you both. Like I said, my name is Chris McKay. We have David McKay here. He's founder of HMK Company. He has also been a consistent voice throughout this bond. And then Josh Whitaker, who joined 3 years ago and has taken the reins of the bond. And it's really incredible to see that throughout our transition as a company, that we were able to continue to maintain our service to you. And as I've heard, and hopefully that's true from your perspective, we haven't dropped the ball. We've been able to still deliver on our promises. So without further ado, I put this presentation together, and the way that I've structured is based on this bond promise. And that's what we've referred to since the beginning of this. And for those who don't know, the bond promise is the SEL 803. That's the ballot language that your voters approved. And that first page, it's on the screen, is what was on that ballot. So the key of this is, it's usually written pretty vague, and it speaks to HVAC improvements, which for those of you who remember back in 2018, we had a lot of wildfires, right? So that was a major concern. Utility systems to improve efficiency, and I'll speak to that a little bit later and what some of the efficient measures that we received. Safety, infrastructure, enhanced student and staff well-being, and then technology. And then there's some renovation projects and additions that I'll get into here. If you go to the next slide for me, Steve. I just want to spend a second, and I recognize it's a little small, but for the goals for the bond, this when you have vague language like I just read, it can be sometimes difficult to, I think, Steve, to create a scope of work. Thankfully, Jim Westrick in the back, who helped craft this language for this expanded scope. But when we look at the scope, we filter it through these goals. And these goals really cast the vision for this bond. So increase or improve health and safety. Prioritize flexibility and adaptability. Be sustainable and energy efficient. Promote inclusiveness. Promote financial stewardship. Standardize facility systems and plan for the future. When I think about the success of the bond, I'm weighing it through this lens. And hopefully we have achieved all of them. I really believe that we have. We can talk about the scope here, but I'm going to go to the next one because I think it summarizes it really well. I just wanted to include those because that's what was included in the ballot language. So when we put this structure together, we thought about it from these district-wide projects. And I just talked about it from sort of the goals perspective, but district-wide safety enhancements. HVAC, mechanical, electrical, plumbing upgrades, restrooms, and technology. When we put this bond together, we structured it strategically so that we had siloed budgets. And I think this is really important because we didn't want to shortchange any school. We believe in equity across the district. And we wanted to make sure that even though we had projects prioritized to go first, that we did not spend all of our funds and exhaust them on those early projects in a way that we would not have funds for the later projects, if that makes sense. You can't do all your projects at once. You have to stagger them and stage them. So it's really important. And then we had those major projects that we've outlined, Hellman Elementary, Ashland Middle School, Walker, and Ashland High School. And then there's the consistent themes, which are those universal access. A lot of people call ADA improvements, but thankful for Steve, that wasn't good enough in our eyes. We actually defined it as universal access because you could actually meet ADA and not provide equitable access to buildings. And you can actually see that at the high school with the way that we strategically put the stairs and other access to the science building. And then sustainability. So you'll see those two themes throughout every decision that we made. I just want to acknowledge a couple things because transparency was one of the goals. And in doing so, we wanted to establish a consistent message that we could have to the board. And in doing so, we had monthly reports. And those monthly reports also had schedules and budgets. And the budgets never changed format. And this was very intentional because we wanted transparency. So you, as oversight, the oversight committee, which I'll speak about in a second, and the community could see that consistent messaging and know that we're not mismanaging these funds because these are public taxpayer funds, and we wanted to make sure that they have trust in the district. So we established an oversight committee, and their main charter was to ensure financial oversight and make sure that we were spending and meeting that bond promise. So we established a routine cadence for those committee meetings, and then this is probably what I think is the most important is these design teams. So at each site, we had a core team and focus groups. The core team was structured around administrators, teachers, custodians, maintenance, facilities, parents, and even students. And this team had a lot of input and direction to the projects. They were the team that really helped guide and navigated these projects. And why it's important is because they actually selected our design firms and they selected our contractors. And when we go into each project, you'll see why that's important because there's plenty of good architects. We interviewed architects and they were great firms. I've worked with all of them actually that I proposed and interviewed. But the important thing is when you select a design firm, it needs to match the values and the culture of your school. And they need to be able to listen and understand the users of that space because they're going to be designing. And and casting a vision for what your building is going to look like for the next 50 plus years. And I think that your teams did an incredible job, really, and I'll show you here shortly. And then there was focus groups, and those focus groups were the users of those spaces. And this is important because oftentimes what I hear post-bond is that the custodians, the teachers, they weren't heard. They weren't even involved in the design process. And I just want to commend Steve for helping put these teams together and all the site administrators, because they were involved at every meeting, and we had multiple engagements at each phase of design to make sure that they knew that their voices would be heard and incorporated into the design. The last piece on here is communication. So we put a bond website together. We had monthly newsletters, we had social media, and we had videography. And again, I'm just going to call it Jim Westrick because he was included in those videos. I somehow got him involved to do these interviews. Steve was in interviews, administrators were in interviews. And we had the mission of there's going to be individuals in the community who are going to proactively look for communication, but then there's going to be individuals who would like to know but may not proactively seek that information, and we wanted to push that information out to them so that they could see how their tax dollars are being spent. All right, so moving into, thanks, Steve. Sorry. Moving into sustainability and standards. So this is, again, one of the goals. And when we look at sustainability, it was really important to the community, really important to environment, obviously. And we spent a lot of time trying to determine how we would hit our sustainability goals. What are our sustainability goals, and are we going to seek certification? And we hired a consultant, Brightworks, to help establish a certification, and we leveraged the City of Ashland's Climate Energy Action Plan. They had just established this right before our bond passed, and we identified about 22 of the 30 or so tenants that they had set out, and throughout our process, we always went back to those to make sure we were hitting the sustainability goals. I'm going to talk about standards in just 1 second, and I'll cover that again, but then we also had energy usage audits done at our buildings. And Hellman and Walker Elementary School particularly, where we had significant renovation or additions, we reduced energy consumption by over 40%. And that's not an apples to apples comparison, because those buildings didn't have AC. And in that 40% savings, that includes AC, which is huge. And that comes from choosing efficient systems, from how we conducted our envelope, which is the exterior scheme of the building, the insulation, the roof systems. Again, this is a team effort. This is your architecture firm. This is your contractor. This is Brightworks who helped establish these standards. And it's going to set the district up to save utilities and impact on the environment going forward. So moving down to standards here. Building standards are essentially the products, the methods that and the finishes that we select in our buildings. You know, if you look around this room, everything that we're looking at is some sort of specified product by an architect. And what we did was we established standards to help ensure consistency throughout the district, right? If we have a design firm at Hellman and a design firm at Ashland Middle School and they're different, how do we ensure that there's parity and equity between the two schools? So we establish standards to make sure, from a system standpoint, how do we make sure that those buildings are maintainable, durable, and are going to last through the impact of students, right? Students are not easy on buildings. And all those materials that we selected, we had Brightworks review and make sure that we had long-term solutions that weren't going to be damaging to the environment. One last thing I'm going to say on this is that those district-wide budgets that I mentioned, HVAC, technology, safety, security, restrooms, accessibility, we defined what that looked like as part of this bond. So we defined what does HVAC look like in an area where we need to have climate resiliency and be able to ensure that students and staff are breathing clean air. It just so happens that this all happened at the same time as COVID, right? So when we were going through this, we actually had a consultant who helped us navigate what type of systems should we be looking at? What type of technology can we reduce the impact? So, and then, of course, the way that you deal with COVID is the complete opposite way that you deal with wildfire smoke, right? But we had to have a system and then have a single control system that we can help mitigate the impact. So we have filtration systems that don't let the harmful particles of wildfire smoke, that also prevent the particles of the COVID. So we did everything we could to make sure that our students and staff were protected district-wide. Technology, Steve, I can't even take any credit for this because Steve is a guru when it comes to technology, and he helped define these standards that would help provide consistent technology that also led into COVID when you had students who were no longer in classrooms, right? So again, thank you, Steve, for all you did there. Same with safety and security, defined how we were going to accomplish this district-wide restrooms, and then that accessibility, like I mentioned, we defined as universal access. Oh, thank you, we're at Hellman. All right, so I think everybody's hopefully been to Hellman at this point. I think it was completed in 22, roughly. So we know that it was a new classroom addition, right? But the reason why I want to show this is just because I want to show the insight and the impact of your core team and the folks at the schools. So, like I mentioned, they chose the architect. They chose an architect who they felt would listen to them, incorporate their design and their thoughts. And when you look at this, Hellman had those 4 pods, and every teacher we talked to said that they had these elevated windows, and they loved the views because it didn't matter which classroom you were in, you had beautiful views. And we were going to put this new addition in a field, and they were very concerned that there wouldn't be equity for all the students, that when they look out the windows, they'd have a beautiful view. It didn't matter if it was Grizzly Peak or if it was across I-5, and I'm so sorry, I forgot what the views over there, but that was important to them. So the architect, Matthew Guthrie from BBT, did a topography study of the valley, and he calculated what the view would look like from those windows all the way up to the mountain peak and ensured that every student would continue to have the beautiful views. They also planned for the long-term use of this campus and realized, how do we navigate the pickup drop-off so that it doesn't impact the neighborhood, because it is a neighborhood school, and how do we provide future proofing for additional classroom wing when you have those 2 remaining pods that will need to be replaced. So just incredible job on this project. Again, like I said, it had about a 40% energy usage savings in addition to just a superior building from all aspects, including new playgrounds, new walking track, basketball courts. So it's just an incredible project. All right, Ashland Middle School plus trails. So this is probably one of the most challenging projects, just simply because of the amount of renovation that happened and the fact that there's 2 schools here. But I cannot speak highly enough of the team of Soderstrom and Architect, because again, we created 2 separate sort of design parallel paths here, where we could identify a way to completely renovate this school to create a functional way to achieve the educational program. And you look at this, I don't know how many of you guys, hopefully everyone's seen the old building that had the 3 wings. It's almost unfathomable that this is the end outcome, right? But if you walk through any space, despite old or new, it has a consistent feeling throughout. And that, again, is the building standards that we established. There were no shortcuts in this building, despite being an old building. Same HVAC standards, same technology standards, same safety, security, and restroom standards. And then the trails program, being able to establish as a magnet school, but also be able to give it its own identity with its own entrance and all of its core educational program, and giving it that separation. I just think this is probably one of the most successful projects I've ever been a part of, and really proud to be a part of it because of the tremendous value that it brought to a very diverse group of students, right, between 2 schools.
Let me emphasize one thing real quick. We've talked a lot about standards, and the other thing that standards do is we have consistent products all the way across your district. So Robbie now only has to have 1 pump stocked. He's only got 1 control system that his staff needs to be trained on. So all of those things bring operational savings. We've talked about the energy savings, but now we're also bringing operational savings. So I think that is really a big piece to help ease Robbie's job to be able to continue to maintain the building. So when you hear us say standards, that's what we're really trying to achieve, is that unification of products across the district.
All right, dropping down to Walker Elementary School. This was also a fun one, and really looking to the board, thank you so much for your trust here. Rebecca Dice, I think you're a part of the board. I'm so sorry, my memory is fuzzy going back 5 years. But when we first started this project, we had about a $9 million budget, and it was to renovate, basically just to renovate as much as we could. And for those of you who don't know, there was a wing that runs parallel to that new wing right through that courtyard. And Steve and I walked through that when we were getting ready to launch this project, and we're like, we could spend $9 million here, but I don't think that anybody is going to be happy when we're done. And I don't know that we're going to really be able to do a good job. So we went through this process of evaluating it, doing assessments and analysis, and putting a cost benefit together. And we probably had 4 or 5 meetings with the board, and we put an estimate together. And thank you to the board for your trust, for your catching the vision here, because I think, I don't forget the number, but we allocated probably another $15, $16 million to this project. And what we ended up with is essentially a brand new school. We also received 2 seismic grants totaling about $5 million that were able to help structurally reinforce the historical building that faces Walker Avenue, as well as the gymnasium. Really, you walk through this building and it's incredible. I unfortunately didn't get to see the finished product prior to my, prior to my departure in 2022. When I walked through it again this year after I returned, I was just amazed. So great job to Mike Freeman, who's on here, to Josh, Steve, board, thank you so much. And I just, a couple highlights here. When you talk about safety security, we have this internal courtyard that has playgrounds, so you have visibility from all angles. We did away with, again, talking about universal access. We could put a ramp down to that basement, but we decided it wasn't a good idea. Instead, we were going to add square footage in addition, and we were going to use that for mechanical space and for storage. Again, we don't want students walking in the rain, walking outside in the winter, because we meet ADA, right? But that wasn't good enough for us. So we just added square footage to this addition. We also were able to solve, I believe, or at least reduce the impact of pickup drop-off with the middle school sort of competing on that Walker Avenue. So I'm going to turn it over to Josh for Ashland High School, if that's okay.
So as most of you know, Ashland High School was kind of the last major project on the bond. That's just where it landed. And for a lot of reasons that created benefits for the overall project, both in scope and budget. It was somewhat of a phased approach in the sense that it seemed like multiple projects in one, but primarily it was known as the modernization project, which impacted several different buildings. The design scope on that was essentially focused on the bond promise in the form of accessibility with multiple buildings that have multiple stories, and then safety and security on an open campus, which introduces challenges in itself, and then infrastructure upgrades across multiple buildings. And the timing also was really beneficial because it aligned with the district receiving 2 seismic grants on this campus as well, one for the humanities building, one for the science building. So we were able to capitalize on that timing, create efficiencies by implementing those structural modifications alongside the original scope of the project that, again, maximized budget, creating those efficiencies. And then that budget diligency also allowed the board to approve a quad renovation. And I think, it's pretty apparent that there were some major upgrades to several buildings on campus, mainly the humanities building and the science building. But I think the quad has really become kind of the focal point. And it was a neat opportunity for Architect to work with some of the students to let them voice their opinions and be involved in the design process, and they were also able to capture some of the kind of historical aspects of the courtyard before it was modified, reaching back, I think, 40 years. So they also implemented some opportunities to create gathering spaces that accommodated some of the annual events that are held in the courtyard. So encouraging students to, gather outside and enjoy that facility. And then also it was a much needed opportunity to support some of the vegetation around the courtyard. So yeah, overall, I think the timing of the project was really beneficial, and I think it's worth noting that relocation of staff and students is a huge cost that can essentially come directly out of the budget for improvements. And the accommodations and willingness of the staff and students to, make adjustments where necessary, and utilization of Lincoln really, again, allowed us to maximize the budget and have as much of an impact on that campus as we could. So really appreciate that support from staff and students and the coordination from Steve and his team.
All right, Willow Wind. This was a fun project, a really fun project for me because, it's a historical sort of building. It's residential, and it's how do you meet standards that are commercial building standards in a residential home that's converted to classrooms, right? Well, we did it. And the last spawn they put up like ductless mini split units, the kind of those wall mounted. They just basically recycle the air and they temper it, right? Well, Steve and I agreed that wasn't a good solution. That did not meet our building standards, and we were not willing to sacrifice our building standards simply because it was a residential building converted to a school, right? So we put the same standards for our HVAC. We put safety security standards, even though it's a little bit of a different type of campus. We also provided universal access through ramping down to that I think it's an art classroom, it's sort of down below in the daylight basement. So I just think this is such an incredible project because we were able to preserve sort of the program and the nature of this campus, but also achieve our building standards. And I think that it would have been an easy button to just say, oh, let's just replace those ductless mini splits. We'll do that every 10 years. But instead, we provided a long-term solution that is going to mitigate the same risks I talked about earlier. And it doesn't matter where you go to school in Ashland School District. We wanted to make sure that it's the same outcome for every student. He got too close to the computer. So the last few buildings that I just want to talk about is Bellview Elementary School, the maintenance facility where Robbie works, as well as transportation. And, as part of the last bond, Bellevue received a significant renovation upgrade, and part of the process, pre-bond planning decided that they didn't need as much upgrades because they just received them. However, they still needed technology upgrades. They still needed safety security, and they still needed to meet our HVAC standards. And there was one area of that building that didn't have AC, so we provided AC. We also provided the new control system so we could monitor our HVAC systems, close outside air dampers if there's wildfire smoke, and then make sure that they can be converted to our new filtration system. The same with maintenance and transportation, access control, and HVAC systems to make sure that even though they work in maintenance or transportation, they still meet the same standards. So finally, I put some recommendations together, or we put some recommendations. I know it wasn't me. It was really Steve, David, Josh, myself. And what we did is we looked at the projects. We looked at the schools, and we said, what is left for this district? And we really don't think that there's much right now. But I wanted to just outline some recommendations for you in the future. And the first is pretty straightforward, I think, is replace the 2 4-classroom pods and upgrades to the library and gymnasium, systems and roofs. So one of the things with this bond is it was never called out to replace roofs. We replaced them everywhere that we could because I want to put a 40-year roof on your buildings if I can. So nothing is critical today. We did everything that was necessary, but in the next 10 or so years, those are things to think about, or I guess 5 to 10 years. The middle school is just replace systems at 7th, 8th grade building. So those were built probably 25 years ago now, and then as well as a large gym and roofs. So again, very minimal. I mean, in all sense, we have upgraded your buildings to the highest level. Walker Elementary School, minimal upgrades. It's a brand new school, even though it's 70, 80 years old, historical. Ashland High School, roofs, systems, gymnasium, and theater buildings, and then renovate or replace those existing classroom spaces. And then finally, district office. We recommend just getting it off of the high school campus to create its own identity that's outside of the high school, move traffic, and then reclaim that space. The final thing that I have to say, and absolutely open to questions here, is I just want to highlight the financial status. And, you know, there was numerous challenges throughout the last 6 years beyond anybody's control. But I think this is really important. The school district sold bonds totaling approximately $107 million. After receiving bond premium, the Awesome Grant, which is a state match, 4 seismic grants, and strategic reinvestments, so this is us in cooperation with the business managers, putting spend downs together on what we forecasted the expenditures to be, you received an additional $44 million. It's approximately 40%. Delivering $151 million worth of value in capital improvements for your community at the cost of $107 million. I also want to add that when we are currently planning for other districts, and the cost of additions and new construction like you see at Walker and Hellman Elementary School are nearly double just in the 3-4 years since they've been completed. So not only have you significantly increased your funds, but you got significant value over today's dollars. And then the last thing I'll say is this: despite all those challenges and 6.5 years worth of work, you have $4 million remaining that can be used for any capital or building improvements.
Thank you. So I know that was a lot. I promised I'd keep it at 30 minutes. I think we're close because we started at 7:08. So I got 1 minute left. The last screen, I just want to make sure you're clear. Those are just recommendations. I think one of the things that we did not do well, in my opinion, was to look to the past to inform the future. Through the years, I've actually discovered master plans, you know, or what do you want to call long-range facilities plans that have stretched from 96 all the way out to 2047. And I don't know that we followed them to the extent that we probably could have. I actually just recently probably dropped a box on my desk, and it was all of the long-range planning and bond planning for the 2007-8 bond that was done. And I don't know that we actually looked back to that to inform the one we just passed in 2018. So what we wanted to do was to inform the next community bond committee that is outside of us. We're just a part of it. Some of those things that we feel are absolutes that we have to take care of, like roofs. We should always put roofs into our capital improvement bonds. They should always have a budget and a line item. And I'll be honest, that was one of the biggest challenges we had, was we had so much need to keep our kids safe, warm, and dry, and there wasn't an identified budget for it. So those are just recommendations. Obviously, those would go to a community committee, and that community committee would take those and do what they will with them. But we're hoping to be a part of that process and to really inform them and do it with data to back it up as to why we feel those things are important. As far as the $4 million go, I know my phone's probably lighting up right now with all kinds of ideas about how we can spend that. That will be at the board's discretion. I can tell you right now, Robbie Moles has a long list of things that we still need to have done. We know there's a lot more work to be managed here, and that $4 million will be, go a long way to head down that path. But we'll be coming back as needed. We're hopeful to get a bond or a seismic grant for Hellman for next year, which, some of those dollars would go towards that. And we have some other ideas we'll bring to you. But for the moment, we want to get this high school project wrapped up and to work with Sherry and the HMK team to make sure that we, all of our numbers are in sync. And we'll get those back to the board and let you know exactly how many pennies we have to spend. So with that, we'll take some questions.
Well, I just want to say thank you to HMK team. Sincerely, that's amazing work. Thank you, Steve. And thanks to, the architect and BBT and K&O and everybody that worked on it. But especially thank you to the community that made this happen, because we are incredibly lucky to have a community that supports us being able to do this for our students.
I'd echo that. It's actually on my document here to be the last thing I say to you and to the whole community, is that none of this would have happened without the support of our community. And we are blessed to have a community that supports us, and supports education, has my entire career here, and they do it well. So yes, thank you to the community and to our neighbors for all these projects as well.
Also, my thank yous, and I do have questions. But agree, huge thank you to the Ashland community to support another huge facility renovation to support our students and our staff to give them the best education that we can give them. And a huge thank you to previous school board members who put the district in a financial spot where our bond rating was great enough to get a really good deal on selling those bonds. And I know we all are committed to helping get the district back into the same place 8 to 10 years from now so that we have the opportunity to do this again to get those roofs and those continuing the longevity of our facilities. Question on that $4 million, is there a time period that we are required to spend it linked to this bond program? Okay.
No, there's not.
Okay, thank you. That's great news. The second question I have is around the recommendations. I just noticed there weren't, for now, any recommendations around Bellview or Willow Wind. Is that just because you guys, it wasn't a building you guys were as in-depthly involved with, or just around that one?
No, where we see them currently, and the average age of our buildings, there's just no recommendation because we'll have to see what the next 10 years, 8 to 10 years does to those buildings. Obviously, we'll revisit every campus. One of the first things I'm going to do once the dust settles here is get back into a long-range planning. That's usually somebody you bring in to help you go through that process. And we'll go through every campus and every site. And again, you look at Bellevue, you look at Willow Wind, you look at all those campuses, the first thing I'm going to look at is their roof, the age of their roof. Look at their mechanical systems and see where they're at, and look at their boilers, see how long, they've been in place. And then you start working your way into the interiors. Obviously, I've said it before, we have a lot of work to do on safety and security on all our campuses. That's going to be an ongoing process. So they weren't left off that list intentionally. There's just some things that we know were obvious as we walked off of these projects and moved on to the, what we consider the delta in between bonds.
Yeah, thank you. And Steve, a question for you, just how we as a school board can support the continued maintenance of these practically brand new facilities now, recognizing that another bond wouldn't be realistic for, a long period.
I'd have to think about that for a minute. I think I have felt support from the bond or from the board throughout the bond process. And as we head into this delta, I think one of the things we could do is really spend these $4 million wisely. And I'm going to lean really heavy on Robbie and his team. We've made things last a lot longer than they should in a lot of cases, and I think it's there's some things where it's just time that we invest, and we're finalizing that list, and we'll bring that list forward. We probably want to get some pricing to it and get you an idea what that's going to cost. But we have some ideas, but ultimately it's the board's discretion, and we'll take input on how we do that. But yeah, I think the support is to help us spend this $4 million wisely and then really put us in a good fiscal position so that we can come back. And actually a little bit tighter window than that. I think we're back at it in about 4 years or 5 years. We're going to get that pre-bond committee back together and be heading for the next one. Hopefully. Yeah.
And I will mention, I would love to look into setting up, some set aside every year to help replace those major expenses that happen no matter what.
Sure.
Yeah.
I would not complain.
I just want to chime in and say thank you so much to HMK, because I want to note your professionalism. There were so many challenges that came along the path of this bond. It would have been really easy to face those supply chain issues and the skyrocketing costs and just say, we're not going to be able to do it. We're not going to be able to hit your numbers. But not only did you hit the numbers, you actually came in under the margin. I want to note your flexibility. We're picking up those seismic grants as we're going along, and you're adjusting on the fly and folding them into the projects and making it happen seamlessly. It was really impressive. As a random note that just came up, thanks for replacing the roof that had that massive amount of rock on it that you guys had to take down. That was ridiculous. I appreciate you doing it. But truly, it's been a privilege to be part of a community that supports this, but it's been a privilege to work with you all, because we couldn't have had the success that we've had without your skill and efforts. Thank you.
All right, and I will also, I came in 5 years ago in 2021 while this project was already underway, and yes, I said yes maybe 100 and some of those times that you came to us. But I will second what Russell said. I mean, it really, like, especially for me during COVID, when, as we saw those remarkable increases and the dramatic changes we had to make to plans to the high school to be able to accommodate everything that was happening. So to me, what I heard tonight really, I think, sort of was a little bit eye-opening, really, because I was just focused on, okay, here's this thing, how can we move forward? But to really get that background of here's our vision and how we really kept it consistent across the district and we stayed within that and we stayed true to that, that was really nice to hear. So I appreciate that a lot. And it's been quite a road. So thank you for all your hard work.
Anything else?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so next up we have the annual report from La Clinica with Elise Travertini. Welcome.
To speak. Yep. And point that one in there. This one. I'll talk a little. If you'd like, you could use this or the arrows to go through. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for having me. My name is Elise Travertini. I am the Business Development Director for La Clinica. My role for the past, I've been with them for 20 years, but for the past 19 years, I was a school-based health center director. And am newer into this business development role. What my role really is now is I am the liaison for La Clinica for all of our pediatric partnerships with the school districts and any pediatric serving program in the community. Tonight, I am going to go over really kind of this year and past, but also look at 3 years of data of the Ashland High School. If there are questions about our school-based system in general or questions about La Clinica in general, I will try to answer those as best as I can. I put in a really quick agenda, really talking about, interestingly enough, this is great timing as you just went through the bond work. We received a federal grant to do some capital renovations for the Ashland School-Based Health Center over at Ashland High School. They were minor renovations. Really what it allowed us to do is to bring in our second behavioral health clinician, so our therapist, into that space. There was a room that was down a hallway, kind of out in the back, that I think at one point was used as a black room. It had a big sink and this giant countertop, and the school was willing to let us renovate that area to create a second behavioral health carpet in there, replace the carpet, replace the baseboards, and some other cosmetic things with our federal grant. So that was no cost to you all, and it was our ability to really kind of upgrade and spruce up the clinic. This picture that you see is actually the new, this is where the old dark room used to be. It's now a second behavioral health clinician office, and just a little bit of what the plans look like. This next slide is really our, and I have to put on my glasses because my eyes are getting old. This is our 3-year statistics of since we've been kind of in Ashland. And it's really around both our patients that we see individually. So when we have patients, these are individual patients. They may have multiple visits. And then the other side of this graph is really how many visits that we saw. What we have seen statistically is we've seen an increase of behavioral health access, so more youth are accessing behavioral health for more visits. And our medical, interestingly enough, our first year we had kind of a higher bump, and then it started to slide down a little bit. This year has been an interesting year kind of across all of our school districts in general. We haven't seen as much engagement in behavioral health and medical, and we the last 2 years added some substance use prevention and intervention services over at the high school, and we're also seeing kind of a slight decline. Whether that's good news, bad news, we're not sure. It's just data that we currently have. So why are the youth coming? What are we seeing? Why do they come to our health center? I highlighted kind of the top 5 reasons of why they come in for medical reasons, top 5 behavioral health reasons. Medically, it's headaches. Headaches tend to take the very top of the list, stomach aches, and then just like any injury to leg, hands, knees, shoulders, arms, you name it, the youth are accessing that way. Physicals and well child checks really kind of hit 4th on the list, and then any vaccines or immunizations that youth need to get. Behavioral health, I don't know if this would be a surprise for folks, but really anxiety, depression, those really take the top 5. So you're looking at generalized anxiety. When you see other reactions to severe stress, it's an anxious response, but it's not hitting a specific anxiety diagnosis, but it's impacting their life significantly enough that they need support. Major depression, and then when you see dysthymic disorder, that's really kind of a low-grade depression that's kind of ongoing for at least 2 years-ish, depending. So who do we have at the clinic? I have, when you see the lines that actually connect to your school, family, patient, those are the folks who are on site at the clinic. And then we have other services that are there to also support youth and families in the clinic. So on site, we have a medical provider 2 days a week. We have a medical assistant that works with them. And that's really your prescriber, your medical prescriber for medications and anything like that. We have a registered nurse there 3 days a week, so they're doing a lot of the triage. They can do immunizations. If they see a youth and the youth really needs to see a provider, they can put it on the provider schedule. We have 2 full-time behavioral health clinicians there, 40 hours a week. So that tends to be what brings us into schools in general. Our services are the behavioral health need. And so we staff them to how referrals come in and what makes most sense. Roughly about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, there was a conversation around how do we work with substance use and substance use prevention, intervention, and education. And we added on a certified alcohol and drug counselor for our end that does that prevention, intervention, and screening services, but we don't do treatment. And so that's our core group of folks who are on site in the clinic. Other folks who also support youth, we have community resource specialists who families or youth can be referred into our community resource specialist, and this is helping them with any other needs outside of the clinic that the family or the youth need support in. So it could be things with around barriers to transportation, it could be social service needs, it could be the family needs a primary care provider, like the adult in the family, we can help connect them. Sometimes that is the only entrance into our services. So youth and families can access those services without getting medical care or behavioral health care if that's all that they really need. We also have a benefits eligibility specialist, so that's really your folks who help families engage in the Medicaid system, so OHP. They can help with enrollment, re-enrollment. I think this is kind of going to be something important as Medicaid requirements change over these next few years. Those services are available to both the youth and the families. So they can be referred in and we can help engage those families and help them with any of that paperwork. The other thing that we also have is called the FLOW program. And it is called, and it's kind of a long name, so it's Psychiatric Health, Life Skills, and Opportunities for Wellness. What the FLOW program actually is it's a consultative model that we have. We have a child psychiatrist, and we have a psychiatric nurse practitioner that works for La Clinica on the whole. The child psychiatrist can provide consultation to our medical providers and our behavioral health clinicians. And the way it works is right now we have it where if we are the primary care provider for youth or families or even adults in our primary care, the medical provider can reach out to one of those two, and our psychiatrist can provide consultative care or consultation on how to help better support the youth or the adult. We're also doing this with Southern Oregon Pediatrics. So Southern Oregon Pediatrics tends to be one of the larger pediatric providers. Our child psychiatrist provides consultation to their providers. That's the bulk of it. Now, if a medical provider has a youth that they've been really working with that has really struggled with they've tried different medications and they've tried all of those things, they can flow that youth or adult into that flow program with the child psychiatrist. They help stabilize them, and then they flow them back to the medical provider and then provide support that way. So we have that available internally in our system to help any of the folks that we are their primary care provider, or Southern Oregon Peds is the primary care provider, as well as they provide consultation to our behavioral health clinicians. The biggest thing that we've been working on really for the last year and a half is really around how do we keep kids in school without exclusion around substance use? And that's really our substance use prevention, intervention, and treatment services. So last year we've been working really, I feel like we've been working really collaboratively with this, the high school counselors, vice principal, and some of the community treatment programs. So COPIA is your closest treatment, adolescent treatment, substance use treatment program here in Ashland. They have now joined with Options. And so we have really been looking at how do we help support the school and the youth to reduce that. So what we have done is we have set up a workflow with the school counselors to really highlight if youth are found with any sort of substance use or anything on campus, we can help provide some screening. And that screening is a comprehensive screening. It's not just around their substance use, it is around, we'll do a depression screening, we do an anxiety screening, we do a suicide risk screening, and then we actually look at any other determinants of health that those youth need, because usually substance use isn't the only need in terms of prevention that they have. So we'll do a very comprehensive screening. Then we work with the school around utilizing a curriculum called Teen Intervene. And Teen Intervene is a research-based, and I have it on the next slide, it's an evidence-based program that not only are we using in Ashland School District, we're using it in Central Point School District, we're using it in Phoenix Talent School District, and the Medford School District is also using it. And so the hope and the dream, my hope and dream, I will say my hope and dream is that we're all kind of speaking the same language. Both the school staff are speaking the same language as whether it's the La Clinica staff or it is somebody else, and the treatment providers are speaking the same language, because that is really important for our family and our youth. And we know that people move, and that they have a similar structure, they understand what that structure is. This year, what we noticed last year is that the further away substance use treatment is from youth, the less chance that they're actually going to engage in it. So over the summer, we met with COPIA/Options to talk about what is the possibility of getting treatment onto Ashland High School to support those youth who really do need treatment, that the brief intervention isn't enough. So during the fall, they brought on a master's level certified alcohol and drug treatment provider who is there currently 1/2 day a week to provide treatment for those youth. And that provider can also help provide some mental health overflow for us. So when our 2 behavioral health clinicians are full, they're also certified to be able to provide mental health as well. And so that was, I felt like a real big win in terms of now you have screening, intervention, treatment. The other thing that our brief intervention specialist is doing this year, she worked with your the high school health teacher to provide the opioid prevention curriculum in the classroom, and really kind of looking at how do we help support classrooms in that way. There's a curriculum out there that we are looking at right now called, oh my gosh, what is it called? It is called Catch Your Breath. It is a vaping curriculum that is a classroom curriculum that potentially we would want to say, is this something you're interested in, and how do we get that in? Vaping tends to be one of the bigger things that I think school districts kind of wrestle with. This is, so for anybody that is interested in, this is the process of Teen Intervene. It breaks it up into roughly 3 sessions. We break it up into 4 to 6 sessions. They're pretty long sessions, and so we break it up into smaller, more digestible chunks for youth, and that they're not missing as much school. So if they're doing it during school day, or if they're doing it after school, that it's just smaller and easier for them to digest. So instead of 3 sessions, we split it out to 4 to 6. And questions?
I have a quick question for administration. So you all are located at the high school campus.
Uh-huh.
Does La Clinica also provide the services at the middle school and elementary schools?
We don't. We are
Okay.
currently right now at the high school.
Okay.
We're working on, I've been working with April of thinking about how do we open those services up to your middle school and elementary school, but they would have to come to the high school campus. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So I have a question too. I didn't hear you talk about birth control and sexual health. So is that part of La Clinica's offerings?
It is. So historically, originally Ashland High School had Rogue Community Health Center on campus, and they provided those services, and we just continued the same services.
I just have a question. So it sort of goes back to that slide where you showed the number of visits, and that's all for the high school campus, I
That is
assume.
for the high school
And if
campus.
I was looking at it correctly, it essentially seemed like the number of patients had gone down, but the number of visits had gone up. So I'm assuming that means that there's more consistency of care. So for example, we're seeing kids who are coming for counseling
Yeah,
and
they're
have
coming in
like
more frequently.
regular sessions. So I'm just curious, I mean, are all students eligible for that? Like what?
Yep.
And is there a long wait list, or is that something they can just walk in and take advantage of?
They can walk in and take advantage of it. They can self-refer. A teacher can refer. Really, we have opened it up to, I will say at the high school, youth are their biggest advocates, which is great. I mean, to teach youth how to advocate for their behavioral health needs and their medical needs, but really it is open to anybody. Our wait list right now at the high school is low to none, and that's this weird trend this year across all of our schools, is we're having less referrals coming in for youth. It's not just Ashland, it's literally across. We have 19 other school-based sites, and it's been a trend across all of them.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, make sure I'm following these numbers correctly. So next up, we have the Science and Health Curriculum Adoption Update with Rebecca Garmati, Becca Leroy, and Hillary Cosenza. Come on up. The more, the merrier. We're good. We're used to it. Hours and hours. We're good.
Okay, I did want to say it is School Board Appreciation Month, so let me be the first tonight. I don't know if anybody else has said it. I don't know if anybody else noted that, but yes, and I will make sure that the Ashland Middle School delivers a case of Spindrift for your next meeting. You really, ooh, wow. But yeah, appreciation, I definitely know that it is a volunteer job, and big appreciation for you, to all of you. So, yes, so I am heading the Science Curriculum Adoption Committee. So I imagine you want to kind of look at a little data first I put in your packet, and I can bring that up. But a little background, I did head this committee about 9 years ago as well. I think it was back in 2019, around that time, right before COVID hit. So kind of brought the band back together, as Todd Hobein likes to say. And on the committee is Lindsay Gates from Bellview, Tyler Claycomb from Walker, Emily Bland from Willow Wind, Andre Cajalvas from Ashland Middle School. Caitlin Olson is a TOSA that's helping facilitate the work. Lori Green from Trails, Todd Hobein from the high school, and Trish Dorr from Hellman. So nice, well-rounded committee represented from all sites and grade levels. So on our first meeting, we did, of course, look at kind of the standard data that any team would look at. It would be the SBAC proficiency data. And here it is, well, you know, the students take SBAC science, if you don't know it, 5th grade, 8th grade, and 11th grade. So here is the data we looked at. We always like to put in a little bit before COVID, just to kind of have that as a, you know, gauge of what things look like before COVID. And then we didn't test for those 2 years. And then there is the proficiency data for 5th grade after COVID. So really trending in that right direction. And just, if, you know, for your knowledge, it was the curriculum we adopted, Amplify, back when I did the committee about 9 years ago. So 5th grade, pretty much they've been using Amplify from 21 to now. So really looks really nice and solid. 8th grade, you can see a slight decline in scores. We kind of talked a lot about that with specifically my secondary teachers on that team, kind of pondering how much reading and math goes into that test. And specifically, math has been a weakness in our middle school SBAC data scores. So just kind of wondering how much that plays into being able to be proficient on the science SBAC as well. And there is our high school proficiency scores in 11th grade, which again, trending in the right direction and look really nice. Some other pieces that we looked at was just our on track, 9th grade on track data that also looks very strong in the last few years as well. So we looked at that data. Oh, okay. So that was the data we looked at, the people that are on the committee. So then we kind of dug into ODE, kind of gold standard, what, you know, curriculums have they looked at, what rubric did they use? So I included the rubric in your packet. They have a very, very beefy rubric that we felt like, wow, this is, you know, great. I mean, if you go through every tab on the Excel document, it's very lengthy. So we are using that to look at the different curriculums. And then we also we talked to the committee kind of what is important to us as Ashland School District and you as teachers. So we made up our own little rubric that we're also looking and kind of running the curriculums through. And one, you know, and again, this is just kind of, you know, nothing like researched or anything, but we would love a curriculum that offers or tips or offers help for blended classrooms, because at our elementary level, they're really, you know, dealing with that. So that was a request by our elementary committee members, is to kind of, if there was any, looking through that lens, if any curriculum like brings that up, that would be important to us. That it meets on the ODE culturally responsive criteria. They have that very specifically. They've looked through all those curriculums, so we really want to pick a curriculum that meets, doesn't partially meet, that solidly meets. It's really important for all the grade, K-8 really talked about this, that they really, really like kids to have hard copies and books in their hands. Everything's so tech. We do not want a curriculum that's 100% tech. They really, really, we talked a lot and spent a lot of time, a lot of passion about kids having real informational text in their hands. So important for us to choose a curriculum that includes that piece. And of course, just easy to implement. Caitlin Olson brought up, she works a lot more at the elementary level, that just curriculum fatigue is real. Our elementary teachers teach everything. So it's just important to remember, something. Of course, we don't want to just be playing Bill's Nye the Science Guy videos. We don't want something, just plugging in video, but something that is a little bit more digestible, a little bit easier for especially our elementary teachers to be able to implement. So that's what was important to us and the rubric we're using and kind of our process so far. So just wanted to bring that to you all, see if you have any feedback, questions, anything else you want us to be focusing on. And we have 3 more meetings, and then our hope is in March that I would be back and be suggesting our recommendation to you of what we've come up with for K-12. This is a K-12 adoption cycle. And then I met with Michelle briefly, and we were kind of hoping if we could get your approval by the April meeting, because we would love to be able to order materials. That process can be kind of lengthy, and make sure that we have them ready to go for in-servicing teachers in August. Yeah, so that's my report.
No, thank you all for the time you're putting in to
Yeah.
reviewing the curriculum.
Yeah,
How many
that's fun.
curriculums are you all evaluating?
We looked at a lot of the ones, that are listed. In general, it's like, you go to the ones that are approved by ODE and start looking at them. So really, we've looked at all of those. I put it in my notes that I think you have. We really, are starting to narrow it down and seeing the value of Amplify, and there's a lot of positives about Amplify. So do we want to stay with that, K-8? But there's a lot of positives, and teachers are really liking this Open Sci-Ed. So really starting to really look at that. Is it good to, move to something new? How do people feel about that? So a lot of talk about that. And lots of pros and cons to both. So it's going to be a hard decision.
Yeah. Look forward to the recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay, can I just ask a couple questions? So just to clarify that the Amplify that we're using right now, that's K-8, or is that?
It is K-8.
Okay, so what are we in high school is?
Yeah, thank you, Becca. So the high school, they would like to use this curriculum adoption cycle to upgrade their AP textbooks, because by the time we would they would be out of date if we wait until the next adoption cycle. They're about 6 years old now. And the recommendation from Todd, I believe, and their biology, we adopted a biology textbook back in the previous adoption that they still love and they still use and they're happy with. So the current textbook, they would like to buy the new AP biology textbook and an AP environmental science textbook, and then also the anatomy and physiology. Even though it's not AP, it is a college credit-bearing class. So they would like to upgrade that to the 12th edition. So biology has a great textbook cycle, the textbook they adopted during the last cycle, and then environmental science is very much a currently based topical curriculum that they developed themselves, and is very, he felt the feedback from the department is really dependent on the students in front of them and how they adjust that curriculum depending on the students in front of them. And that's, going well. Hillary pulled some just pass rates, and again, the ninth grade on-track data that supports that curriculum that they're using is working.
And the Amplify that we're using now, is that something that we could just continue? Is there any sort of a cost benefit to that if we stayed with that versus switching to a completely new curriculum? Or
we haven't, the next 3 meetings we'll start to dig into cost. We haven't dug into the cost. We're really just looking at the curriculums.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So, because obviously, we want to get the best thing we can, but we do have to keep an eye on, what it is. And I know I think for the English language arts, we ended up going with something that was more tech based. I mean, I love the idea of having actual text-based learning as well, but it would, we obviously want to see the difference between what that would look like bottom line. So, all right, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just want to do this. Shuffle. Okay, watch me navigate a not MacBook. Okay, so Hillary and I are kind of tag teaming our health curriculum adoption. So just kind of an overview of where we're at, similarly to the science curriculum adoption with Rebecca. On our committee is myself, Hillary, Erica Beck-Bratton, Susan Holt, Charlie Henry, Amanda Lacey, and Alex DeSantis. So we kind of have a good representation of people with different perspectives and at different levels that are helping give us some feedback on that. Unlike science, we don't have any sort of standardized data to go off of. So what Hillary did was pulled some of just our grade data from our personal health and our family health. And so there's just kind of a breakdown of passing rates, looking at that for our 10th grade health class, and there is a year that we have kind of a gap because we were switching to our SEL standards, so that's why one of the years in our data has a bit of a gap year and didn't have that on there. Health is pretty applicable to real life, and so we see students being pretty engaged and successful with health curriculum because it's a lot of the issues that they're facing and skills that they're building for life. And then if you want to speak.
Sure, we also included some of the data at the middle school. So using their wellness courses 6, 7, and 8, you can see each trimester. The green in the pie chart is representative of the percentage of students that are scoring 90% of their proficiencies at proficient or better, right? So typically, students are very, very successful in the health classes at both AMS and at the high school.
And prior to that, we don't really have a lot of measurable data at the elementary level to include in this. Just so everybody does know, looking at kind of the ODE big topics that we cover in the different units, both in personal health and family health, we look at wellness and health promotion, safety and first aid, substance use, misuse and abuse, food, nutrition, physical activity, social, emotional, and mental health, healthy relationships and violence and abuse prevention, growth and development, and then sexual and reproductive health. And please feel free to ask us questions as we go along. And then kind of looking at those skills that we're building while going through all of those units are the analyzing influences, accessing valid health information, interpersonal communication, decision-making, goal setting, health and safety practices, and then advocacy. Just some other considerations that we have when we're looking at picking our health standards and the information that we're educating students about. It's important that we're hitting that tribal history and shared history, the Oregon Transformative Social Emotional Learning, Aaron's Law, and then opioid prevention lessons. Really, there's not a lot to choose from. So similarly, ODE has already done a lot of really good work around the rubrics and around what curriculums really comprehensively cover all of those units according to the standards, because there are a ton of standards. So the two curriculums that we're looking at primarily right now, one being K-8 really is the Great Body Shop. That's a consumable. People who have used it, and we have people on the committee who have used it in other districts as well. That is one of the only ones that is, comprehensive and covers the K-8 scope. And so there's some continuity there between K through 8 to have that and us all using that. It encourages, like I said, consumables so kids can take them home, have conversations at home. Families can know what their students are looking about. It helps them have dialogue around it because some of these topics, parents don't know where to start or what's developmentally appropriate for their student. And so this is a really nice resource for them to be able to have some of those conversations. And then at the 9 through 12 level, we're looking at Live Well. And I think anytime we're talking about high school health, it's going to be kind of a supplementary thing that we use and that helps guide the framework, but it's always changing. So secondary health teachers are always looking at also what is relevant and adding in those kind of nuanced things that come in and are inevitably always ahead of what the textbooks have in them. Questions about that?
I'm sorry, it's late and I'm, trying to, that very first slide you showed, I still was trying to figure out what I was looking at, but it looks like that there was this, the very first semester that you showed up the scores, that one. there was like a huge number of fails in that first S1. I'm just curious, do we have any, am I reading that right?
You are reading that correctly.
Is that just an anomaly or was something going on there?
Yeah, I haven't dug into what went on that particular year.
'Cause that's
but
not
that
good.
is, yeah, a bit of an anomaly. Yeah, and I
Okay.
will say we also have an online credit retrieval for health that we've had a lot of kids circulate through that. So.
Okay.
Because it is an elective class, but it's a graduation requirement.
Right.
So.
Right, yeah.
Becca, my guess of that red bar graph is more related to attendance than curriculum.
Probably.
That, okay, so 123, 24, what was going on then? Okay.
One of the things that we're also doing, and that's the benefit of having a couple other people like Amanda Lacey and Alex DeSantis on our committee, looking at students with different abilities and really noting the kind of vulnerabilities that some of our populations experience, especially around sexuality education. So we're also working with student services to pilot and also adopt this curriculum so that we're meeting the needs of all of our students. So our MAPS program is going to be piloting this curriculum right here, which is also, trauma informed and aligned to our state standards that hit some of those unique challenges and educational components that some of our different ability folks are experiencing.
And much like the science team, we've built our own kind of internal rubric that really highlights the pieces of the curriculum that we want to make sure are present before we commit to adopting. So I have 2 slides here. This is just like a front and back page of the rubric that we have been kind of developing as a team, and so we're hoping to get some feedback from you folks on that as well. But really making sure that we have alignment with the Oregon standards, that it is clearly covering all the topic areas that Oregon asks us to do. Oregon is a pretty progressive state in terms of their health education, and so sometimes all of these pieces aren't always present in a real evident way. So we just wanted to really call it out and make sure that we're getting those covered. Along with those essential skills that students are using to learn the content. We want to make sure it's age appropriate, developmentally appropriate, scientifically and medically accurate is also very important to us.
Fun fact, in not all states does it have to be medically
Correct.
accurate or,
yes.
So.
Yes. And then, we have a piece in there about instruction. We with real world connections. Becca did talk about how hands-on and relevant health can really be for kids. So we want to make sure that trauma informed, avoid scare tactics and strength-based language in there. We want it well organized, easy to accessible teacher guides, so a lot of support for teachers, flexible lessons with a variety of assessment methods, and of course those family engagement tools that are going to make it really easy for teachers to share what's going on in classrooms and what's upcoming. Make sure that our students are able to access the information in a way that suits their learning needs, so making sure it is and levels. We want learners, that's a big bucket, but we want to make sure those supports are there, whether it's language or any other sort of neurodiversity, representing diverse cultures, races, and abilities, free from stereotypes, and culturally responsive. And then we have the same and similar next steps as Rebecca shared. We're going to get together, continue to review and score and discuss those curricular options, and then we'll meet to share those notes and discuss, and then bring a proposal to the school board.
I have a quick question for you on the rubric. Are there any of those that are like instant disqualification? So like, if something hit every, top score and everything, but was not medically accurate, would you just throw it out? Like, are there?
I mean, for sure, yeah. If something
Yeah,
goes
right.
medically
Yeah, no, exactly.
accurate, right.
But
I think
there's,
that's one of
it's
the
pretty.
questions that we've had a discussion about in the committee is like, which one of these are non-negotiables, right? And so kind of highlighting those. We've had that discussion. We haven't called them out explicitly on the rubric, but that's an idea.
Yeah, like if it doesn't meet cultural responsiveness, and there's a whole breakdown within the rubric around like it scored low in this end because it doesn't do a good job of representation, or it leaves out, comprehensive practices around this specific thing, or
pretty detailed. Any other questions? Yeah. All right. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Okay, next up we have our finance report. I see Sherry getting up already. With Sherry Ely.
Good evening, everyone. My report is going to be very brief tonight because we do have the audit report that we're going to be moving into right after this. So just the high points on revenue that I wanted to hit. I adjusted the beginning fund balance now that our audit is done, so I adjusted that to actual. And so that was a couple $100,000 lower than what I had in the projections the prior month. And then I also made an adjustment for the depreciation that we need to put into the transportation fund. And so that's really just an adjustment to the state school fund. So it isn't a transfer out of the general fund. We just move a portion of the state school fund in our January payment. We'll move a portion of that into the transportation fund, and obviously the rest goes into the general fund. So I just wanted to make sure that that adjustment was noted in the revenue this month. And on the expenditure side, the main things I have noted there are I have made an adjustment in the general fund to accommodate where it looks like we're going to be over budget in IDEA. And so over the award that we're getting for IDEA, because it is lower this year than it was last year. That's not an unusual trend with IDEA, that you have to absorb some of that into the general fund. And then I also made an adjustment on the health insurance side. I know I mentioned last month that I was a little bit nervous about where we were at with our healthcare fund. And so I just wanted to reflect that in our financials, just so that we're keeping our eye on that each month as we move forward. And those are the big things. Our ending fund balance is still looking like it's going to be a little bit over $3 million. I know that will adjust as the year goes by and actual expenditures come through, but right now we're looking at about $3 million, so a little over 7% ending fund balance. So keeping an eye on that, fingers crossed, that we still end up with a positive result there. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Hey, Sherry, I would still like, you had said something about providing maybe a 7-year repayment schedule for the debt. And I know, is it the same as the one that was
in November?
Way back
Yes.
when?
Yep.
Nothing has changed there?
No, so if
Okay.
you look at the note that was in there, the term sheet from Kashmir,
Uh-huh.
that has the amortization schedule on it, and that's the same.
And it's the same? Okay,
Yep.
cool. Okay. Very good.
Are we going to go over the adjustment to that beginning fund balance when we go through the audit report, or is that
So
separate?
the adjustment is just once we go through the audit, there are always different adjustments that are made to each of the funds. And so I was projecting a 1.7 million beginning fund balance way back in September, and that's before we even got started with the audit really firmly. And so once we go through the adjustments that need to be made, whether it is like prepayment for expenditures that were booked from a prior year, that's a portion of what makes up the difference between what I was looking at in September and then where we finally ended up. And then just a lot of little adjustments as the auditors go through and look at expenditures that maybe should have been thrown back into the prior year that had been booked in the current year. And that's all a process that we go through when we're going through the audit.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
So is this the pattern then? Is this consistent every year, that this is how the adjustments happen after the audit? Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
If nothing else, I can have Ben come up. Yes, and this is Ben Cohn. He is our audit partner with the Soren Audit Firm.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here tonight. As Sherry mentioned, my name is Ben Cohn, and I'm an assurance partner with Soren CPAs. You may know us more familiarly as formerly KDP CPAs. So I'm going to present the results of the audit tonight. And I'm going to be going through two documents. I'm going to be going through the financial statements themselves, and then a letter which Sherry should have sent to you called the communication with those charged with governance. So I'm going to start with the audit report itself. I'll give you page numbers to follow along with, but don't feel compelled because I'm going to bounce around a lot. So I'm going to start basically at the very end of the audit on page 70. And so what this is the summary of audit results. Also, I'm not going to focus too much on anything operationally. I'm going to focus more on the audit itself. Sorry, Sherry, you got roped into.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm just going to kind of go down here through the bullet points. So the first section is with regard to the financial statements. And so the report the auditor issued on whether the financial statements were prepared in accordance with GAAP was an unmodified opinion. So of course that is the best you can do. That's what we also call a clean opinion. And so I'm actually going to jump over to that audit report, which is on page A1. So I only have the PDF pages.
Yeah, that's okay.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
It's going to make it a little complicated for you. And so there's a couple things I'd like to point out from the report. One thing is an emphasis of matter, which we use to highlight a significant change from the prior year. So as discussed in note 1 to the financial statements, the district changed its method of accounting for compensated absences due to the adoption of GASB 101, compensated absences, and our opinions are not modified with respect to this matter. So the adoption of this new standard resulted in a $3.3 million restatement to beginning net position. And that, of course, is in the full accrual statements, so that doesn't actually affect what happens in the district's books. I also like to point out from the auditor's report, it just has a pretty good definition of management's responsibilities for the financial statements and then our responsibilities as your auditors. It's always a good reminder. So management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements in accordance with GAAP, and for the design, implementation, and maintenance of internal control relevant to the preparation and fair presentation of financial statements that are free from material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error. So that's kind of a mouthful, but the reason I like to point this out is because management is ultimately responsible for the financial statements. We, as your auditors, do assist in preparation, but ultimately Sherry reviews everything and takes responsibility and signs a management representation letter to that effect. So our responsibility as your auditors are to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements as a whole are free from material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error, and to issue an auditor's report that includes our opinions. So reasonable assurance is a high level of assurance, but is not absolute assurance, and therefore it's not a guarantee that an audit will always detect a material misstatement when it exists. The risk of not detecting a material misstatement resulting from fraud is higher than one resulting from error, as fraud may involve collusion, forgery, intentional omissions, misrepresentations, or the override of internal control. So as part of the audit process, we look at things on a test basis, usually based on our materiality or the magnitude of the transactions. So we're not able to look at absolutely everything. And so, the purpose of the audit is not to find fraud. It is to make sure that the financial statements are not materially misstated. We do build procedures into our processes to look for fraud, but that is not the purpose of an audit. And so I just always like to point that out. Okay, so I'm going to jump back to the final page. Also, if anybody has any questions, feel free to chime in at any time. Regarding internal control over financial reporting, we noted no material weaknesses in internal control over financial reporting. We did note one significant deficiency in internal control over financial reporting. So I'm going to just jump to the independent auditor's report required by government auditing standards, which is page 63, but you're getting good at this, Sherry. So a deficiency in internal control exists when the design or operation of a control does not allow management or employees in the normal course of performing their assigned functions to prevent or detect and correct misstatements on a timely basis. A material weakness is a deficiency or a combination of deficiencies in internal control such that there is a reasonable possibility that a material misstatement of the entity's financial statements will not be prevented or detected and corrected on a timely basis. A significant deficiency is a deficiency or a combination of deficiencies in internal control that is less severe than a material weakness, yet important enough to merit attention by those charged with governance. So, as mentioned, no material weaknesses. We did identify one significant deficiency, and I'm just going to turn to the following page following the summary of audit results. So the significant deficiency was related to financial reporting and audit adjustments. So management is responsible for establishing and maintaining an effective system of internal control over year-end financial information. Proper tracking and recording of assets and liabilities and the associated revenue and expense is a key component of effective internal control over financial reporting. And so we did note that certain year-end account balances and their activity were not properly repaired and or reviewed accurately. And so we do highly recommend that the district enhances internal controls by developing a year-end closing process, which includes having a preparer and reviewer of all accounts. This is a repeat finding from the prior year. Additionally, in the prior year, we had several other findings as well. So I would say that this does indicate an improvement from the prior year. And also, of course, Sherry was not here during the year under audit. And coming into a situation like that, is going to create additional challenges as well. So I think everything being said, Sherry did a great job.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to turn back to the summary. We noted no non-compliance material to the financial statements. Regarding federal awards, we noted no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal control over major federal programs, and our audit did not disclose any findings that were required to be reported in accordance with the uniform guidance. So everything else, very good. We did audit two major programs as part of the single audit. We had the Child Nutrition Cluster and then Title I. And the threshold that we did use to distinguish Type A and Type B programs was $750,000. That will be going up to $1 million this year for any engagements that end after October 1st, which yours would. And the district did not qualify as a low-risk auditee.
Speak a little bit to what that means.
A low-risk auditee? Yeah. So essentially what it means is there's an evaluation criteria that you go through for each entity that's subject to a single audit. And if they are high risk, you're required to test 40% of federal expenditures And if they're low risk, you're required to test 20%. So it's literally could result in testing one or more programs. And so the reason that the district was high risk this year was because there was a finding in the prior year, a material weakness. So anytime you have a material weakness in the prior year, the following year, you're going to be high risk.
Okay, and the material weakness either in the federal awards or otherwise?
Any material weakness.
Thank you.
Yeah, but not for a significant deficiency. And so if you don't have any material weaknesses next year or something else that would trigger high risk, then that should drop off in 2 years. You're welcome. Okay, finished with the summary of auditor results. There are a couple other things I'd like to highlight from this report. So I'm just going to jump to page 61, which is the independent auditor's report required by Oregon state regulations. So as part of obtaining reasonable assurance about whether the district's financial statements are free of material misstatement, we did perform certain tests of its compliance with provisions of laws and regulations, contracts, and grant agreements, and other matters included in the provisions of the Oregon revised statutes, non-compliance with which could have a direct and material effect on the determination of the financial statement amounts. And so in connection with our audit, nothing came to our attention that caused us to believe the district was not in substantial compliance with these provisions of the Oregon revised statutes, except as noted in note 1 to the financial statements, where we did disclose an over expenditure of appropriations in the special revenue fund in the support services category of approximately $24,000. And we did also note that the district, did budget some negative fund balances, and that is a violation of local budget law. And we did also note that some resolutions that were provided to us were not signed by the board, and we do recommend that all resolutions should be signed.
Is it best for us to ask questions about specific points as we go, or wait until the whole
No,
end?
you can feel free.
Great, and this one might be more for Sherry, but that note 1 of an over expenditure, is that linked to the IDEA stuff that we're experiencing this year?
No, I believe that was in food service.
It's food service, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So adjustments that were made during audit, and then that threw us over appropriation by that 24,000, I think.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Okay, I think that is all I have from the audit report. And so I'm going to jump over to the letter real quick.
Here is going to be the corrective action.
Okay, so I don't have that.
Oh, okay.
The board received it, but I don't have it here.
Okay, I'll just go over kind of high level. So this letter is to inform the board about significant matters related to the conduct of our audit for the year ended June 30, 2025, so that you can appropriately discharge your oversight responsibilities and so that we can comply with professional standards. So regarding significant accounting policies, management is responsible for the selection and use of appropriate accounting policies. A summary of significant accounting policies used by the district is described in note 1 to the financial statements. We've already discussed the implementation of GASB 101, compensated absences. Other than that, no matters have come to our attention that would require us under professional standards to inform you about either methods used to account for significant unusual transactions and the effect of significant accounting policies in controversial or emerging areas for which there is a lack of authoritative guidance. Regarding significant accounting estimates are an integral part of the financial statements prepared by management, and they are based on management's current judgments. Those judgments are normally based on knowledge and experience about past and current events and assumptions about future events. Certain accounting estimates are particularly sensitive because of their significance to the financial statements and because of the possibility that future events affecting them may differ from management's current judgments. So the most significant estimates affecting the financial statements are management's estimate of the property tax receivable, which is based on information obtained from the Jackson County Tax Department. The two estimates of post-employment benefits other than pensions, or OPEB, one of which is an asset and one of which is a liability. The OPEB asset is related to the OPERS RHIA account, which is management's estimate of the cost of Medicare companion health insurance premiums of eligible retirees. And the other OPEB is the estimate of the valuation of the implicit rate subsidy retirees receive from medical insurance they purchase through the district. There are also two estimates of pension liabilities. One estimate is net pension liability related to the OPERS cost-sharing multiple employer defined benefit plan and is based on information provided by PERS. And the other estimate is a total pension liability of the early retirement stipend pension plan, which will be paid to certain employees under their employment contracts. Then there's management's estimate of the accumulated depreciation and related expense for the current year, which is based on management's estimate of the useful life of the fixed assets. And then finally, management's estimate of the lease liability along with the associated right of use asset, which is based on management's estimate of the incremental borrowing rate and the term of the lease. So for each of these estimates, we evaluated the key factors and assumptions used to develop the estimates in determining that they are reasonable in relation to the financial statements taken as a whole. Regarding financial statement disclosures, certain financial statement disclosures do involve significant judgment and are particularly sensitive because of their significance to financial statement users. The most significant disclosures affecting the district's financial statements relate to the disclosure of capital assets, long-term debt, leases, pension and retirement plans, and post-employment benefits other than pensions, or OPEBs. And again, this is just based on either the complexity of those disclosures or the magnitude of those disclosures. Regarding audit adjustments and uncorrected misstatements, management did correct certain material misstatements that were identified as a result of our audit procedures, and we are not aware of any uncorrected misstatements other than those that are clearly trivial. We did provide some recommendations to management regarding observations that we had during the audit. The two recommendations were to develop policies and procedures for regulatory compliance. We did note that the district did not retain the required level of documentation due to staff turnover. Sufficient procedural controls do not seem to be in place when a key employee leaves, and we recommend the district develop a written set of policies and procedures to mitigate the risk with regard to document retention, especially as it relates to regulatory compliance. And then this is a repeat recommendation just to clean up the trial balance cash accounts and review the interfund payable receivables, which I believe you started to do a little bit, but there's
that
still
is a big chore.
a little bit more to do there. I think that is all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions at this time. Or of course, if anyone thinks of anything later, always welcome to email me.
Okay, so this is, audits are my love language.
That is really weird.
Sorry, it's late at night. It has been one heck of a week already. I just want to do a quick zoom out. Part all, just to run and recognize. So this was a budget adopted under your predecessor, is that correct? And then Joseph and Sherry inherited and implemented. And I want to give a big shout out because those material weaknesses from last year were very large, and I really appreciate how quickly you all addressed them, and that they're not shown up in this audit is a very good sign we're in the right direction. Significant deficiency, that's just an internal control correction, and I know, Sherry, we have heard from a board that you've worked really hard on adopting some reconciliation practices, which is really what this deficiency talks to.
Yeah.
And so I want to just recognize that your corrective action plan that you have written to address it mirrors exactly what you told us you were doing in practice, and I look forward to having it now being in written word so that we have that documentation for continuity with staff turnover. So thank you, Sherry, for all that. That being said, I do have some questions for the auditor just to help my understanding of reading the document or the financial statements. Sherry, if you're the better answerer. And the first question is, if you could just talk a little bit about the deferred outflows and deferred inflows and how best to interpret those.
Yeah, so I mean, those are very tricky. It's kind of a high level accounting terminology, but essentially what it represents is when you have and this is only really showing up in the full accrual or the government-wide statements, so the front statements that include the long-term liabilities and the long-term assets. So it represents a future commitment to have to pay or receive money is essentially what it is. And so if you have a future commitment to pay money, it becomes an asset because you don't owe that money until well into the future and because of the time value of money.
Okay. And then the inflow is the reverse of that. It's
Exactly.
the change of, and it's all based off of the projection assumptions we have of how investments, particularly in our PERS, will be doing.
Exactly. All that information comes directly from the actuary. And I wish I could tell you exactly what kind of magic they're working. For the most part, we take that information as given. We do some underlying testing of the census data that was provided just to make sure that what was provided to the actuary is supported by your records. But we pretty much depend on the actuaries in that regard.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Welcome.
Well, I just have a laundry list, but please feel free to jump in, anyone else, as it comes up. Okay, sorry, all. This one's for Sherry. Sherry, I noticed in the statement, the financial statements, particularly, which ones were, the schedule of revenues for both our general fund and our special revenue fund. It looks like the loan we took out, that 5.2 million loan, 2 and change went into general fund, 2 and change went into special revenue. What other funds did it go into? Like adding those two up doesn't equal our 5.2.
So there was some that went into the capital projects fund.
Okay.
And then the general fund, and then the rest of it was in special revenue. And so that was the ESSER fund that was overspent, the food service fund that had a negative balance. And I think there were a couple of small ones I'm not remembering. I think there were a couple of other small ones in special revenue, but those are the only ones.
All right, thank you. And that makes sense because the capital projects ones looked like it also had our bond money in it, so hard to call it out just as that specific. So thank you. And I just have a question for Dr. Hadrick. Notice we have a lot of buses that have been bought over the last few years. How many buses total do we have?
I would have to get you that information.
Okay, not high importance, but just was shocked how many buses we have purchased.
Yeah.
Oh, Steve's on it. Perfect. And then on page 82 of the PDF, it is a summary supplemental information. And of course, I've lost it too. Talks about our energy bill for heating. And I just want to state how excited I am that we spend roughly $900,000 a year on energy, and with that, new efficient buildings. Looking forward to seeing that come down a little notch, hopefully. But the replacement of equipment, is this line item, I'm sorry if I don't have you there, 60, if you type 60 into the number here, so not, actually I can't tell you what, page 82 of the PDF, or 60 of the page number.
Okay, 3211C.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to find. What page is it on yours?
There's 82 in the PDF. I spoke wrong.
That's required by ODE. They used to require a full set of what we call the 3211s, where it would have all the detail of your revenue expense basically presented according to the ODE chart of accounts in a matrix so that it's totally comparable by all school districts. They got rid of that requirement this year, which was nice, took a little bit of a burden off of us. It's rare that they actually take something away that we have to do. They normally just add more every year. But so yeah, this is just an informational requirement.
Okay, thank you. And that replacement of equipment, is that set aside or things that we actually spent?
So there was nothing spent on replacement of equipment out of the general fund.
Oh, thank you.
This is only general fund.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. My mind didn't. I'm gonna pause for a potential motion to extend.
So as of 9 o'clock, I will need a motion to extend for an additional 30 minutes. Should we pause to do
I
that?
move that we extend for 30 minutes.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.
And then my last question, and I didn't have time to pull up last year's budget. Was it known that that what was adopted as a budget had a negative ending balance, or did that just come about? It was known. Okay.
It was known, and from what I could find, it looked like a resolution was done that was presented to the board that was trying to correct that negative balance. And it was negative, I think it was negative ending fund balances in 2 of the funds. And so I don't know what happened with all of that historical stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I found quite a few things that it looked like there were several iterations that were trying to correct some errors that had happened in the previous budget.
Got it. Thank you. I did have time to check the budget we're operating under now, and that does look balanced.
Yes.
So thank you to you both and to the budget committee and board at the time. So I just want to say thank you to the auditor for, I know how much work goes into it, and especially Sherry, thank you, because it's even so much work and looking for stuff on your end. Looking forward to next year's looking even better.
Thank you. I appreciate your support too. And I do appreciate working with Soren. They are very good to work with. They put us through our paces. You have to know that.
Just
They
want to
don't
make sure
it easy on
just want
us.
to make sure everyone's doing it the right way.
Yeah.
And we appreciate the opportunity to be of service to the district.
I do think the board has to approve the corrective action plan. Do they do that now or? Okay.
I'm ready. Okay, so I will take a motion to approve the corrective action plan as presented.
I move to approve the corrected action plan as presented.
I second.
All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
All
Appreciate
right.
it.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay, so now we move on to the recurring reports. We will have, we do not have an OSCA report this evening, so we will move to our AEA report with Alan Porowski.
While I was sitting, I have no obligation to have impulse control after 8 o'clock. I was sitting here thinking about that $4 million, and I thought maybe we could take a little bit and get one of those giant bungee jumping cranes they have at the county fair and put it in the parking lot, and we could sell tickets to the students. But like also, while we're in the meeting, we could go out and bungee jump a little bit just to keep the adrenaline going. Or maybe a bounce house, that might be cheaper. Okay. From AEA to the school board, dear members of the school board, on behalf of our teachers union, we want to sincerely thank you for your service, your leadership, and your commitment to our students, staff, and community. Your time, care, and thoughtful decision-making do not go unnoticed, and we are grateful for the work you do, often behind the scenes, to support public education. We appreciate your partnership and dedication, and we wish you a meaningful School Board Appreciation Month. With gratitude, Ashland Education Association. Okay, not a lot tonight on our end. AMS is entering an active winter season as students return from winter break and reconnect with academic routines and homeroom communities. Wrestling has started and runs through the middle of February. The band and theater programs are preparing performances that showcase creativity and school spirit. Students are also preparing for the AMC 8 math competition on January 26th. A group of teachers have also begun planning a bike bus day to be held later this spring. At Ashland Connect, new enrollments continue to trickle in. We recently helped transfer a student with high needs from our program to a self-contained classroom in our district, giving this student intensive support to find the right fit and keeping them enrolled in the Ashland School District, providing a continuous education through transitions. Amanda is working with our district attendance advocate, Andrew, to bring a parent support circle to ASD, sponsored by the Family Connection. It is open to all and not just Ashland Connect students. The first meeting will be January 22nd at Trails. Over at Belleview, we are hard at work learning about dignity and Martin Luther King Jr. With all the blends, teachers are feeling like they are losing some instruction time to transitions, but the kids have gotten the hang of it. Hellman says, we are crushing 2026 by starting with expectations stations, so all humans are on the same page and can get back into the routines. We are, as always, navigating the trickier things, blends, less support. We are looking forward to our Changemakers Assembly next Friday. At Trails, we are working on some long-term hands-on creative projects and beginning winter outdoor education for all grades, with the middle school preparing for the Winter Skills Overnight. Our solstice celebration was a huge highlight of the year, reminding us all how special our school community is. We are focusing on the A in Trails this month, which stands for awareness, and still aware of the continued challenges brought by reductions in staff. And finally, Walker says students and staff have come back refreshed after winter break and are ready to take on the new year. Teachers and families are eager to see next year's calendar. Our staff is really hoping that our voices were heard in the creation of next year's calendar. And that's all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any comments or questions? All right, thank you, Alan. All right, next up we have our student representatives.
All right, good evening. As we return from winter break, we have a bunch of things going on at the high school. The students are prepping for finals week, which starts next Friday and is a different structure than we're used to, but we're adjusting to that. AHS has started its new off and away for the day cell phone policy, and although students are sometimes reluctant to this change, there has been an overwhelming positive response, with more people interacting during passing periods and during lunch, and less distractions in class for students and teachers. It will take some time for some students to adjust, and they find themselves accidentally reaching for their phones during lunch or passing period. The policy, I feel, definitely adds to like a busy aspect to the administrators' jobs, but I think as students adjust, it will become more natural and phones will be taken much less.
And then there was a panel of students that was selected to be involved with the principal hiring process. Our Asian Student Union is planning a middle school dance, and so is our National Honor Society is planning a winter formal for high schoolers. They're both going to be in late February. Key Club is planning a food drive. Our Climate Action Club and National Honor Society have both organized hot cocoa fundraisers in the last couple of weeks. Our girls and boys basketball had preseason games over winter break and are starting the regular season tomorrow with their first league games. Our swim teams have had their first two meets, or are going to have their first two meets on Friday and Saturday. And wrestling is continuing to have another successful season, as well as rowing, who is holding intensive practices to get ready for the spring regattas.
All right, thank you. Okay, moving on then to board reports. Who wants to kick us off?
I'll start and keep it going this direction. So on Monday, Deltra and I got to attend the legislative reception in Grants Pass. It's an annual thing where board members, superintendents, and legislators from around the region get together to talk about the issues that we can work together on. So there were lots of board members and superintendents from Ashland, Pinehurst, Phoenix Talent, Medford, Rogue River, Grants Pass, Three Rivers, SOESD, Rogue Community College, and I don't remember if Butte Falls, Prospect, Central Point, or Eagle Point were there. Probably not. We had in attendance for legislators, we had Pam Marsh, Jeff Golden, Noah Robinson, Alex Carlatos, Dwayne Yunker, and Emily McIntyre was not there, but basically covering the entire region. So Tim Sweeney is the superintendent for Grants Pass. He spoke on behalf of superintendents, and he said that his biggest priority is asking the legislature to do something about online charter schools, which drain enrollments and funnel money primarily to open ed in Utah, and have a graduation rate of, this blew my mind because he asked everybody, like, what do you think a low graduation rate is? And people are like, 24%. It's under 1%. And I think he said it was 0.1%. So there's no accountability. And it's something that affects all districts in Oregon. He also talked about asking the legislature to consider pausing unfunded mandates. He talked about the impacts of unemployment liabilities, which for his district went from tens of thousands per year last year to $700,000 last year. He asked the legislature to raise the cap for special education reimbursement because most districts in our region are close to 20%, and they don't get reimbursed for that. And the funding for students that exceed the cap comes from the general fund, so it draws away from other students. Other superintendents echoed those concerns, and we also heard about chronic absenteeism as a need that needs to be addressed, which the senators and representatives acknowledged. Somebody talked about new curriculum requirements placing burdens on districts when they're in addition to instead of rolling into existing graduation requirements, because that takes away from existing or from other classes that students can take. Pam Marsh talked about the need to collaborate with districts on streamlining what accountability looks like and coming up with measures for student success with input from our superintendents. Jeff Golden talked about his change of mind on some previous mandates and said he wouldn't do that again. He did ask that folks proactively inform legislators about impacts to education because they all noted we're not educators. Dwayne Yunker, Alex Carlatos, and Noah Robinson all talked about the need for schools to do better and a desire to see educators directly in their offices and testifying. That one doesn't apply to us with those particular folks. All legislators agreed that they would like to hear about potential impacts on schools and classrooms from proposed legislation directly from districts, not just through OSBA. So OSBA has a regional legislative policy representative and several board members, including the president from our region. But legislators noted a desire to hear more from their constituents that are more familiar with our schools. And this will come in relevant in a second. Representative Marsh also talked about her intent to protect education from cuts during the upcoming short session. We appreciate her dedication to not only our community, but schools across Oregon in that respect. Senator Robinson talked about his wish to see more innovation from K-12, which is different from the message that we heard this summer from legislators on the Education Committee who were expressing a desire for schools to do better at what we know works. And so it was great to hear a legislator say, we want you to do new stuff. All districts noted a loss of enrollment since pre-pandemic, but everybody else is in line with kind of the state's thing, which is about 6%. And we're at about 20%. So that means that there's more factors in play for us. And so I hope that we can continue to work with our legislators on addressing the interrelated conditions of things like housing and early childhood education that affect us kind of uniquely as we redesign our schools through this consolidation process to be sustainable in the long term so that our students can thrive and that we can best function as a centerpiece to our community. And on that note, one takeaway from me, and I would love to hear your takeaway on this, Deltra, is that we are totally unique in our region. We are like some of the other districts, but we are a lot not like those other districts. And so I think it will be helpful for us to, along with the OSBA statewide and regional legislative advocacy, for us to complement that by engaging directly and regularly with our own legislators to report on our successes and challenges. So when they talk about accountability, one of the things that we can really do well is make the case that we are fiscally responsible and that we are seeing gains when we focus our efforts with the funds that the states invest in us. Like we saw from the science stuff, we are doing really well. And I would like for us to highlight that directly to our legislators and not get lumped in with the rest of the schools from around the state. So that's what I've got. Yeah, that's what I've got.
So what he said, for sure. It's a brief. I attended the Ashland High School Winterfest, and I had the pleasure of participating in the Trails celebration of solstice during the holiday part of things, and then we went to this session. So that's all I have to.
Yeah, I feel like with the holidays, there was not a whole lot of time to get things in. So I will just mention I went to the Winter Fine Arts Festival right after our last meeting, and that is always one of my favorite nights. It was a really, really amazing, successful event this year. I don't know if anybody heard about this, but part of it is always having the culinary program prepare a dinner for everybody. That's part of the entry ticket that you pay, and you get a free show, and you get to see all the artwork displayed. And the culinary students, as you probably heard, won all these fabulous awards this year. So we were so excited to have this dinner prepared. And they worked so hard on this dinner. And the night before, there apparently was a power outage, and they lost the whole thing. So that was a huge blow, devastating for all these kids and the staff who worked so hard to create that. But I have to say, it ended up, so AHA, who runs the event, ended up ordering pizzas. And I have to say, everybody there was so gracious and happy and supportive about the pizza that they got for dinner instead of the fabulous meal that had been prepared. It really had a great vibe. My son was playing trumpet, and so I was selling tickets, but I tried to go into stage to watch him play. I couldn't even get in the door. It was like packed to the brim. So I appreciate this community and the enthusiasm that we have for our students, and that was a really great evening to be out there, even despite the winter weather. Let's see, other than that, one shout out to our drama department, a recent graduate, Brooklyn Williams. Those of you who are familiar with her, she was starring at the Oregon Cabaret Theater in the Nutcracker and the Mouse King. I went to see that. It was brilliant. It was so fun. So congratulations to Brooklyn and our theater program had so many successful graduates. And other than that, it's just been coffee meetings and a lot of talking to people and engagement and welcoming in the new year. So
I'm stoked. I bought my favorite plate from the Fine Arts Festival, and Happy New Year, y'all.
Yeah, it was a good turn of the new year. I got to go away. I was happy about that. But I also got to have an interesting informational meeting with the Ashland Affordable Housing Project, with Dr. Hadrick and with Deltra and many other fine individuals, and learn about the hard work they're all trying to do. That's that.
All right. That's it for us. And so next I have public comments. Woo, there he is. Okay, now I'm supposed to read this to you. Okay. Please step up. We have Jim Westrick, who is here to talk to us about the bond wrap-up. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Jim Westrick. I live in Ashland.
Thank you.
Thank you all for having me here tonight. And I am here tonight because it is a bond wrap-up night. As Steve Mitzel had said, there are a lot of people that need to be thanked, and Steve did a great job of thanking so many people. He undersold himself though. I am here really, in addition to recognizing all the people that made this bond happen, really just to recognize one person and embarrass one person, and that person is Steve Mitzel. Steve is, there he is. He said he's got involved in 2019 after the bond passed, and that's not true. He was involved far sooner than that. He was part of the facilities committee that started in 2013, 2014. And then in the bond preparation committee and everything like that. He was instrumental in all of those things and spent so many times. And the reason that I really want to point out to Steve and recognize him is, for everybody and everything that we all did and all the sacrifices people made, Steve was the tip of the spear. And I'm not sure how many calls Steve got every week saying, hey, you're doing a great job. Thank you so much. You're working hard. Versus how many calls he got with the latest conspiracy theory that he was going to knock down Walker and put up a Hooters or something like that. But, Ashlanders, we love our conspiracy theories, and Steve bore the brunt of a lot of that. And to his credit, and one of the reasons that I stuck it out tonight because it's worth it and Steve is worth it, is that every meeting I sat with him, every group, no matter how crazy the idea, right? Fire poles instead of stairs, whatever came up, Steve listened. He was respectful. He always took everything. And I have never met someone of Steve's caliber that was able to navigate those waters in such a respectful place. And in addition to that, he did it in a way where he never lied to anyone, even if it was an uncomfortable truth that people didn't want to hear. And I've been working in public education now, 35 years, yikes. And so I've been in a dozen different school districts, different superintendents, everybody, and people like Steve are rare because they will tell you the truth, even if it's a truth you don't want to hear. And he will stand by it, and he navigates those things with respect, and with genuine feeling and genuine concern for the people that came to him. So I saw it time and time again, and I know that he put in far more than we paid him. And I just want to tell Steve, and you all know it, but I'm here at the public comment because I want the people of Ashland to know it as well, that this is a man who gave his heart and his soul and his life day after day after day to make this district a better place. I was trying to think of things to say, and it was like, I don't know, Charles de Gaulle or somebody that makes me sound smart. So Charles de Gaulle once said, like derisively, the cemeteries of the world are filled with indispensable men. And he's probably right in the long term. But if I were to think of someone who I feel is indispensable in this district, it's hard for anyone to beat Steve Mitzel. So I want to thank Steve, give him my heartfelt thanks. He made my job as a board member and as a board chair so much easier because I knew that I could rely on him, I could trust him, and that he had the ethics and the principles to know and do what's right every time. So that is why I'm here tonight. Thank you, Steve, and I'm so happy we got this bond wrapped up. Way to go. Thank you. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Jim. Okay, next up we have Superintendent Report with Dr. Hattrick.
I can't follow that.
No, nobody can follow that.
But I'll try. So I will start with my presentation from Rotary, where we presented our Student of the Month. It's truly a pleasure to introduce today's Rotary Ashland, I can't read it anymore, it's too late. Ashland Rotary Student of the Month for January, a student who exemplifies curiosity, courage, creativity, and quiet leadership, Leo Chase of Ashland High School. Leo joined the Ashland community in 2023 as a sophomore. Like many students who arrive in a new town and a new school, that transition didn't come with instant belonging, but what stands out about Leo is not just the adjustment, but the growth that followed. Over time, Leo found connection, purpose, and a deep appreciation for both Ashland High School and the broader community. At school, Leo thrives in spaces that value thinking, reflection, and voice. They enjoy learning and engaging in dialogue in Catalyst, contributing to Rogue News, spending time with friends, and also finding balance through solitude in nature. Those experiences, especially in Catalyst and Rogue News, sparked a passion that now shapes Leo's future aspirations. Inspired by storytelling and inquiry, Leo plans to pursue a career in journalism with the goal of sharing meaningful stories with the world. Leo is also deeply grateful for the family members and teachers who have guided and supported them along the way, and it's clear that support has helped cultivate both confidence and purpose. The feedback from Leo's teachers paints a remarkable picture. One teacher shared, "Leo adds a brightness to my day." As an editor for Rogue News, Leo is described as indispensable, an excellent writer who leads with encouragement and gentle guidance. Creative, authentic, kind, and hardworking, Leo is someone whose leadership uplifts others and whose future holds tremendous promise. Another teacher highlighted an achievement that truly deserves recognition. Leo has taken the Catalyst motto, "Own Your Education," to new heights by earning 100% for the semester, a feat that may be unprecedented. This accomplishment reflects near perfect attendance and a focus across 120 class periods, daily thoughtful journaling, and consistently excelling performance on dozens of assignments. That level of commitment speaks volumes about Leo's discipline and integrity as a learner. Equally impressive is Leo's willingness to grow beyond their comfort zone. A self-described introvert, Leo stepped into a leadership role in a blended class during a time of transition, providing stability, guidance, and example when it was most needed. And beyond academics, Leo has also designed and presented original work through independent study art, showcasing creativity and initiative at the Winter Fine Arts Fair. In every sense, Leo Chase embodies what we hope for in our students: thoughtful engagement, perseverance, humility, and leadership rooted in kindness. Leo is not only an outstanding student, but a truly wonderful human being and a role model for our times. Rotarians, welcome, congratulations. So that was an honor to present that this afternoon. Continuing my report, welcome back and Happy New Year. Hopefully everybody enjoyed a restful winter break. I've only got a few updates. So first, Lincoln School. Deconstruction's complete. We're currently doing some additional shoring for safety, and we're waiting for field reports from engineers. This will be a lengthy process, so thank you all for your patience. We'll continue to update you as there's information available. Last night, we concluded our final round of interviews for the Ashland High School principal position. I want to thank students, staff, families who participated in the panels and listening sessions. It was a multiple rounds of interviews, and it came down to 2 finalists. Student panel yesterday afternoon, staff meeting for both finalists, and then community sessions in the evening, then followed up by final interviews with myself. And now I will be presenting the recommendation at either the upcoming work session or regular meeting in February to the board. Also, consolidation timeline, just really quick. We're in the data completion phase, which we're looking at facilities, usable classroom space, enrollment, staffing, projections, and we're beginning data review with cabinet and lead team January and February. I'm also working on developing, well, we are in the process of developing web pages. They're up for the community, and also working on a more detailed timeline than what was presented last month. It was really the 3,000-foot level, and we're going to try to drill it down even more specific so people have a better understanding of what to expect month to month. We continue to meet as a district equity committee and superintendent advisory council meetings. And then, since Dan brought up unfunded mandates, it's a perfect opportunity to give an update about the accountability bill, Senate Bill 141. So one item in the accountability bill brought forth in last legislative session was that each district shall administer interim assessments in math and language arts to measure student academic growth. It's to be done 3 times a year, and districts provided data to the state regarding their current interim assessments. We use IXL currently, which we implemented this year. We were very disappointed to learn that our recently adopted IXL interim assessment did not make the proposed lists. Yeah. So we will be submitting public comment to the state board on January 15th, because not only does this interrupt our longitudinal data, but we have a 3-year contract with IXL. So it'll require adoption of a new assessment potentially, and obviously all that goes along with that, the workload, new data, the staff on stress. So we'll be fighting that with the state board on January 15th. So I'll keep you posted. No, that's State Board of Education. Yep. So we just learned of that recently. And of course, they're not providing funds for that inconvenience. And then, as we recognize School Board Appreciation Month, I want to take a moment to express my deep gratitude and sincere gratitude to the members of the Ashland School Board. Serving alongside this board is both an honor and a privilege. You lead with integrity, courage, and an unwavering commitment to students, staff, and the greater Ashland community. Your work is often complex and at times extraordinarily difficult, requiring you to weigh competing needs, navigating uncertainty, and make decisions that are not always easy, but always grounded in what's best for our students. This year in particular has demanded thoughtful governance, steady leadership, and a willingness to listen, learn, and engage deeply with our community. I'm continually grateful for the way you approach this responsibility with humility, respect, and a genuine sense of care. You ask hard questions, sometimes too frequently, support transparency, and remain focused on long-term sustainability while keeping students at the center of every conversation. On a personal note, thank you for the trust, partnership, and support you extend to me as your superintendent. Your confidence in our leadership team, your encouragement during challenging moments, and your shared commitment to We Are One make this work not only possible, but meaningful and a true joy. The Ashland School District is stronger because of your service. Thank you for the countless hours you dedicate, the thoughtful deliberation you bring, and the heart you put into this role. Our students, family, and staff are better because of you. And now I would like to read the official proclamation from the Office of the Governor of the State of Oregon. This is the really exciting one. Buckle up. Whereas, it's one of those. Oregonians rely on public education to ensure a prosperous quality of life and strong economic health for Oregon. And whereas, locally elected boards fulfill leadership roles and serve as the conduit through which teachers, parents, businesses, and communities demonstrate the care, creativity, and support that lead to student achievement. And whereas, public school nurtures and trains diverse student populations with varying resources, sometimes not enough, to give students the knowledge, skills, and opportunities they need to succeed. And whereas board members build a framework that makes it possible for education organizations to educate Oregon's children. And whereas we thank the committed community members who serve on the boards of Oregon's 197 school districts, 19 education service districts, and 17 community colleges for their dedication to the education needs of Oregonians. Now, therefore, I, Tina Kotek, Governor of the State of Oregon, hereby proclaim January 2026 to be School Board Recognition Month in Oregon and encourage all Oregonians to join in this observance. Please, families, parents, students, community members, when you have an opportunity, thank these volunteers for their service. Thank you all. And we've got a gift. There's so many gifts. Such a nice gift, right? Certificate, rather. Let's not keep your hopes up. Yeah.
Okay. And I'll hand them out. I'd love to make a motion to extend the meeting until 10 o'clock if needed.
Yeah, hopefully not 10 o'clock, but
Second.
All in favor? Okay.
And that concludes my report.
Okay.
Yes.
It's okay, I got a little back.
Oh, yeah.
Allison, Milo, just so you guys know, you do not have to stay for the rest of this, but we're almost there. We're almost there. Yeah. Okay.
Go.
Okay, next up, super fast. We have action item approving the 2026-2027 budget calendar. So Joseph, you will be presenting that.
Yes, attached in your board packet is the proposed budget calendar. I would need a motion.
Okay, why not? I move that we, I move that we accept this budget calendar.
Second.
All in favor? Done. So resolved. Okay, next action item, update board meeting schedule. And I will be presenting this, and I believe the only change is that February meeting that we are moving back to the original date because of the conference being canceled. So I will take a motion to revise the board meeting schedule as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, unanimous. Okay. Announcements and appointments. The board will hold a work session on Thursday, January 22nd at 6:30 on Zoom. And the next regular session will be Thursday, February 12th, beginning at 6:30 here in City Council chambers. All right, so that is the end of the regular meeting. We are now going to move into executive session. I'll put my glasses on so I get this all right. Or I will take a motion for the board to move into executive session to under ORS 1926602E to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, unanimous pass. So we will now enter executive session to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions. Thank you, everybody, for attending this evening. Executive session is not open to the public. No decisions will be made in executive session. Any action will be taken in open session. The regular meeting will resume upon completion of our closed session. The regular meeting is now recessed.